nothing worthwhile, the recognized symbol of excellence in crappy podcasting.
His opponent. Want to know.
Here it comes. Who is his opponent? Come on, Howard. Howard doesn't even know.
Howard Finkel, the announcer, doesn't know. Come on, brother. Let's get it together.
His head.
Get me somebody out here to wrestle. I don't care who it is.
Don't say that, brother. Don't say that, my man. There's some people back there in the locker rooms who would take this man apart.
We're all waiting here with anticipation as to who the opponent will be. Well, maybe we haven't got an opponent.
Well, maybe we have an opponent, but, you know, maybe he's still lacing up his boots. Who knows, man?
Wait a minute. Somebody's music.
That's familiar music, brother.
They've exploded here in the garden. I don't see anybody yet.
Here is the challenger.
It's the Ultimate Warrior.
One man. Oh, they're going to attack.
This place has gone bananas.
Ultimate Warrior, Lord. Gorilla Monsoon. They're going to take over, man. That's what you do when you want something. You go out and get it, baby.
Ultimate Warrior exploding here on the honky-tonk man. Beautiful fly tackle. The bell is gone and it's officially underway.
Warrior doesn't know what to do. He's so excited.
The title definitely up for grabs here.
Oh, we could get a new champion right now, Gorilla Monsoon. Right now, brother, we could get a new champion. I'm here to tell you.
Splash hooks the leg.
That's it.
History has been made here.
Goodness. I love it.
Look at this place go bananas.
Pandemonium is run wild. It's Madison Square Garden, my man.
History once again made here in Madison Square Garden.
The winner of this contest, and new Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior.
It had to be record time, Gorilla Monsoon. It had to be record time, brother.
It is unbelievable. The garden has gone strictly bananas.
Hercules, you stepped halfway through the door. Come on in. We're nightmares on the best part of my day. And WrestleMania is happening in a squared circle. But it has nothing to do with professional wrestling. It has to do with who's the baddest, who's the meanest, who deserves to stand on that mountain. Hercules!
Shango. Oh, wait a minute. Warrior himself is having cut down. Hey, the Warrior's off the apron. Now he's had a match with him, McMahon, but that has nothing to do with it. This is the curse of Papa Shango. This is the taking of the wristband. This is the curse that he applied to the Ultimate Warrior. He's down on the mat, holding his stomach. Look at Shango's face. He put a curse on the Ultimate Warrior. Whatever it is, I've never seen the Ultimate Warrior in that kind of pain. He's screaming in pain. Get Shango. Get him out of there. No, leave him there.
Get away from there.
Look at Shango's face. He's in another world, McMahon. I don't know too much about voodoo, but I'm going to tell you right now, McMahon, the curse has been placed on the Ultimate Warrior. We're back in the Ultimate Warrior's dressing room, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, he is suffering severe abdominal pain. The attending physician there to help him out, along with a number of his friends. The Ultimate Warrior, oh, unfortunately.
Hoxton with a roundhouse and another. And the Warrior's backing up.
Got him with the...
Oh, he nailed him. Here it is. He moved out of the way. Look out, the big splash. 1, 2. He got him.
He got him.
Unbelievable.
The Warriors won the title.
We have a new World Wrestling Federation champion.
And new World Wrestling Federation Champion, the Ultimate Warrior.
This place has gone crazy.
Unbelievable, Monsoon. What a battle. Both ways. Hogan missing the leg drop. The Warrior capitalizing on it and getting the free count just minuscule seconds before Hogan could kick out.
Hoxton came down on that hip and had to stun his whole body. Hulkster now leaving the ring. Bischoff looks sick.
History tells us Hogan. Let's talk about something he doesn't know.
Bingo.
History tells us, Hogan, that a man's legacy is built from the premise that within his life, the moments lived, once lived, become a piece of his history. Somehow, you have conveniently, even eloquently, misplaced pieces of your history. In the one-time epical battle between us, Hogan, you were the quintessential influence of what was good, great, and heroic. But different than you may remember, and albeit you may have beaten myths, legends, giants, and other great men, you never beat a warrior.
He's right up in his face. Right in his soul is what he is.
And certainly not the Ultimate One.
I am Warrior. That is my name. I'm the creator and performer of the Ultimate Warrior, the one and only Ultimate Warrior. You are the Ultimate Warrior fans. Ultimate Warrior is a legend. And the Ultimate Warrior fans, you are legendary. You waited all these years to speak your voice. You fought. I saw you fight over the years. I saw you fight back at all the anonymous ones who put forward all the lies and the mischaracterizations. They tried to reprogram your minds, rewrite history about a wonderful, exciting, fun memory of the Ultimate Warrior. And you fought back, and I'm here tonight because of you.
Every man's heart one day beats its final beat. His lungs breathe their final breath. And if what that man did in his life makes the blood pulse through the body of others and makes them believe deeper in something than larger than life, then his essence, his spirit will be immortalized by the storytellers, by the loyalty, by the memory of those who honor him and make the running the man did live forever. You are the legend makers of Ultimate Warrior. In the back, I see many potential legends, some of them with warrior spirits, and you will do the same for them. You will decide if they lived with a passion and intensity, so much so that you will tell your stories and you will make them legends as well. I am Ultimate Warrior. You are the Ultimate Warrior fans. And the spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever.
All right, guys, I'm already exhausted. Groo just went on a 15-minute diatribe about education prior to us going on the air. Groo, let me ask you real quick. The toilet, everything okay? We good to go? Cleaned out for the next 2.5 hours? Are we good to go?
What happened?
We were just texting before we went on the air. It's just very funny stuff.
I just came to.
Funny.
Did I miss something?
Funny, wild stuff. If you look on our monitors, Andrew was in a lavatory. We placed a camera. No. All right. How are we doing?
We thought it would be funny.
We thought it would be funny.
Doing all right. Doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing good. I actually, you gave me homework. I watched Grandma's Boy. And,
yeah.
The good news is I did finish it. The bad news is in 3 easy installments
of $9.95 from.
Yeah. So
what is it?
I mean,
did you buy the Time Life version?
Yeah, I rented it from Amazon for $2.90. No, it was. I think it was on. I don't know. It was on Amazon or HBO. But you know, let me give you some thoughts about Grandma's Boy, because that's a Happy Madison.
Yes,
deal.
It's like, it's like the B Team. Everybody but Sandler. Although I think he had a tiny cameo in it.
Did he?
According to IMDb, he did, but I didn't. I don't remember. I only saw it once. I just remember laughing hysterically.
Did you feel Grandma's Boy had a ton of laughs?
Yes. No, not a ton of laughs, but a lot of big laughs. It wasn't. It wasn't cover to cover hilarity, but there are some really funny parts in that movie. I
love. It started off good. Rob Schneider. You got a Kevin Nash appearance. I was like, oh, This is going to be.
Yeah, you texted me. You texted me when.
Yeah, I mean. I didn't get a ton of laughs out of it. I actually thought the highlight was this guy, Joel Moore, who played JP, the guy who was the robot. I thought he was actually really the funny character who will do anything to stay on top of Brainasium. I like Doris Roberts. Shirley Jones looks great. Kevin Nealon as the yoga boss, Mr. Cheesy. I love Nick Swartzen. Anything Nick Swartzen, he plays Jeff, the best friend.
Yeah, and he had the funniest line in the movie. Like, I remember when the part that made me laugh the most was when he said he had to go to the bathroom, and someone says he's got to take a piss, and then he's like something like, well, then I'm going to be pissing out of my ass. Like something like that. I remember laughing very hard.
I love anything Nick Swartzen. He's in the Wrong Missy on Netflix. The scene, which I got a good laugh, which is so typical, but when he plays that dance revolution, and it's clear that he's just a white kid who doesn't know how to dance, but the editing, they make him look like he's doing all these moves and he's racking up the points. And of course, the scene with his mom and Alan Covert in the bathroom.
No.
That's some cheap, low heat laughs, but. I didn't think the movie overall was great. I don't even think it would be made today. With some of the humor was very kind of.
I don't think it's a good movie. I just think it's fun. I think it's funny. But the reason that I liked it better than a lot of those Sandler ones is because it didn't really. The reason that I hated the 5 that I picked from Adam Sandler's list was because they all had great ideas, great setups, and great casts, and they blew it. This had nothing. This was just like the guy, the B guys. I expected nothing from it. I was dragged to see it by my cousins, and so I expected nothing, and I got way more than that. So that's why I liked it.
So I guess, like, listening to your reviews, if you're going into a film with low expectations and it sucks, you're not really that dashed. Whereas it seems like with Anger Management, you had really high expectations. You fell well short. So is that kind of like what?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I walk out of there. And, look, I'm going to sound like a snob here. I know I always do, but
no, you don't.
I look at it. I look at it like what I would have done with it. And I go into a movie like Anger Management. Okay, it's got an amazing trailer, a great premise. Jack Nicholson as an anger management therapist with Adam Sandler as his patient, can't lose. And literally, and I go in there and they find every single way to lose. And that's why I hate it. You know, there are some laughs, but the potential of these movies was so much greater than what they, it's like they didn't try. But we covered all that,
Well, that's a good transition. Our last podcast was the way we watched Volume 2, Adam Sandler, The Bads. Mm-hmm. We covered our least favorite mind-numbing Adam Sandler movies. Surprisingly enough, Groo, we only had one movie that appeared on both our lists, The Waterboy. The Bads, as we saw, are really bad. Clearly, our low download numbers indicate that possibly it was even a bad podcast.
How many did we get?
I don't even want to mention on the air. I'll just tell you, let's say...
I'm going to put up fingers. Is it higher or lower?
It's higher than 5.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Then I'm all right. If it's higher than 5,
I'll just say, looking at our total... And then, our Billy Joel was broken up into 2, so that's an additional episode. But we average... and I know that we're inflated up by our Goldberg podcast, but we average somewhere in the low 50s on average. And I will just say that the Adam Sandler Volume 2, The Bads, is well below the waterline.
Yeah. Well, I did mention what we were doing this week to some people, and there was a modicum of excitement about it.
Please, with your highfalutin vocabulary, please do not try to confuse me. Modicum. Well, Groo, let's. We talked about Grandma's Boy. Good transition. Any final thoughts on our least favorite or your least favorite Adam Sandler movies before we move on?
Well, just that because I know we're going to hear from some people, but like I said, the movies that I put on there were the ones to me that had the highest potential and lowest return on the investment, and that's why they're not like. I'll give you one example. Big Daddy is not a worse movie than Little Nicky, but I expected nothing from Little Nicky. And that's exactly what we got.
I don't understand. It's in Sandler's wheelhouse. Period. I mean, all those movies are when he's a massive star. I would say he's not a massive star anymore. But is it based on the premise? Because Little Nicky was
premise
smack dab in the middle of his amazing run.
But remember what we talked about. Remember when you said, what would you like to see Adam Sandler do next? And
yes,
I said I would love to see him take it up a notch and do something that's not stupidly funny, but sort of cerebral in a way, a kind of comedy that I know he's capable of, but he keeps resorting back to lowest common denominator. So Little Nicky basically should just say on the poster, "This is a lowest common denominator movie. If you want plot, look somewhere else." So that's why that wasn't on my list. The movie still sucks, but I knew it was going to suck. But when I see something like Big Daddy was like, that was the opportunity for Adam Sandler, in my opinion, to take it that extra step. Now he's got kind of a serious situation here that he can be funny about, but it can also be, it's got to be real. That's the thing. It can't be contrived. And it was contrived from the first 30 seconds on, and that's why I hated it so much.
I did read somewhere that apparently because Sandler, and I don't know if the Oscar nominations are out, but I think they already came out, or perhaps the first round of movie awards, and he wasn't nominated, and supposedly he's threatening to put out the worst movie of all time if Uncut Gems is not recognized in any form or fashion with the next round of movie awards. So perhaps Little Nicky 2.
Yeah, well, I think in order to get that recognition, I think it's going to take more than one great performance to make up for all the other stuff.
Well, I just think again, not to get off on a tangent, but it's the culture. I think a lot of these people see themselves as cultural elitists. And, Adam Sandler could never have a nomination for a great acting situation, or Sylvester Stallone. I mean, there are there are guys who are not considered great thespians, but once in a while they really hit the mark, and it just seems like two of our favorites, I don't know, seems like they're getting passed by for performances that, at least on the surface, deserve perhaps at least a nomination.
Well, Stallone's a different story. Stallone's been nominated twice.
But he never won.
No, never won. No, never won.
Okay.
He sort of won because he won for writing Rocky. He won a writing Oscar, but he's been nominated for two acting Oscars for the same character. But no, he did not win. Should have won, but didn't.
Was that for Rocky 1 and Rocky 2?
No, that was for Rocky 1 and Creed. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
But Creed was Best Supporting. Creed was Best Supporting Actor.
Yes,
he should have won. He should have won for Creed.
He should have. The guy who won was not even close to. But whatever. Anyway, it's not a Stallone podcast.
All right. Gru, set up. You ready to set up the jingle? We're going to go to.
I'm always ready to jingle.
All right, Gru. Right from our Nothing Worthwhile Facebook fan page, it is Viewer Mail.
Letters, we got your letters. We got your letters every day. Mailman Ding Dong, give me a letter today.
Wait, I gotta do that again.
Oh well, do me a favor. When we do it again, could you give me the finger so I know when the jingle? Because I can't hear the jingle in my headphones. So let me know when to pick it up when it's done.
We're going to do it again because I didn't put the volume up enough. So sorry to bore everybody, but can you give me the intro again? See, this is unedited, guys. This is raw. This is uncooked. It's unedited.
Yeah, it should be edited. But all right, here we go. Gru, right from our Nothing Worthwhile Facebook fan page, it is Viewer Mail.
Oops. I screwed up.
Oh, my Lord.
Oh, here we go. All right, one more time. All right, no. All right, this is our viewer mail. All right, we're getting viewer mail. Okay.
Letters, we got your letters. We got your letters every day. Mailman Ding Dong, give me a letter today.
Wow, that's really something.
All right, Gru.
I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we did that.
Yes, from our Facebook fan page, commenting off of our last podcast, you can hear the disappointment in your voices when discussing Howard Stern. Why do you both keep listening to him? Gru, great comment. Wanted to ask you, how do you see yourself today as a Stern fan? Would you consider yourself still a Howard Stern fan and an avid listener? And if not, where do you see yourself for today's Howard Stern show?
I'm still a Howard Stern fan. I'm not an avid listener, but because the show is not what it was, it's not the quality of the show is not great anymore. So it's not appointment listening anymore. But if he's on a talk show or if he's doing an appearance somewhere or an interview or he's being interviewed, I'll always watch that. He's always interesting when somebody else is asking the questions. These days, like last week we were on. I listened to a little of the Jon Stewart episode, but it was, it just didn't do much for me. And then, just like, I don't know, the show is not what it was, but I'm still a fan of him. It's like I'll still be a fan of Billy Joel even if I don't like the concerts anymore. I'll still be a huge Billy Joel fan. I would compare it to that. Does that fair?
There's always a non sequitur in there.
It's like I am, but I'm trying to think. No, well, we'll always love Billy Joel's music. We'll always love Billy Joel. Will always be one of the greats of all time. But there will be a time where his concerts aren't that good anymore.
Okay, but here's the difference, and I'm glad you brought up the Billy Joel analogy. Billy Joel, his music has not taken a 360. Howard Stern, if not a 360, he's certainly done a 180 philosophically in how he presents the show. So for me, if I'm in my car, I've been on record, Howard is usually the first channel I listen to, but invariably I change it very quickly these days. We talked about last week, hearing Howard interview Seth Meyers on Seth Meyers' writing process and Charlize Theron about overcoming her trauma is just so tedious and so boring. It is to me, and maybe we communicate it different ways, but I make no apologies for it, and that's my current stern reality. And I think for me, I don't even want to bring this up. This is the last comments we'll make about Howard for a while. And it's just time to move on. And, I think I'll always turn on the channel to hope to hear something. But more often than not, Seth Meyers, Jon Stewart, Charlize Theron, it just doesn't interest me.
Let me ask you a question.
Howard talking to Robin and the crew still interests me a lot more. I just, if I want an A-list interview, I'll put on the E channel. I just, that's just not what I want from Howard. But it seems to work for him today.
Yeah, but don't you think that with him being home where he wants to be anyway, he could at least be doing more live shows? Where's there to go?
I mean,
what is there to do?
If you do check out like Howard, which I don't very often because it's very mean, but the Howard Stern Reddit, they just crush him. I mean, Howard goes up, to do 12 hours a week in his home, walking to the basement, and then that whole lame excuse of having to turn off the show at 10:30 because the internet, his neighbors are going to use, the Wi-Fi. Like he's sitting in some mansion in the Hamptons, which he won't tell everybody, but and somehow like I find it hard to believe that because the dentist across the street is using his computer that somehow it's going to affect Sirius XM and Howard's show. And I don't, I agree with everything.
I would rather him do like an hour a day, just him and Robin talking, and then if there's something special, do a special. Do 5 hours a week, 5 days, 1 hour a day. What's going on that day? I would love that. But anyway, enough of Howard. I'm sorry, Howard.
All right, let's scale back real quick. Comments from one friend of the show, Mike Levy, apparently wondering to some form or fashion the criticisms of Big Daddy, Adam Sandler movie, and why not Mr. Deeds. So you were on the podcast. I think you did list Big Daddy as one of your least favorite Sandler movies.
My number one least favorite, yeah.
Okay, well, I disagreed, and I, on the record, said that while I didn't think it was Shakespeare, there was a sweetness there and pieces to the movie that I liked. Yet, Mike Levy wants to know why the criticisms of Big Daddy, but not Mr. Deeds. Go.
Well, I mean, I already talked about my criticisms of Big Daddy. Why that was most hated, and why I actually didn't mind Mr. Deeds is because it was more of a step in the direction that I've wanted him to go. There was a sweetness there, good chemistry with him and Winona Ryder. It was already a built-in story. It was a remake of an old movie, so there weren't many ways that they could screw it up. They did a few, but John Turturro had some very funny moments. It wasn't the complete swing and a miss that it could have been that Big Daddy was, in my opinion, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
Fair enough. Groo, let's get to our topic for the day. In the same vein as Bret the Hitman Hart, we don't have
any breaking news.
No. Why are you interrupting me? I'm transitioning to the next topic.
I don't know. We always have breaking news.
Oh my God!
And I wanted to hear Whitney, but okay, fine.
We'll discuss perhaps at the end of the show. Again, we want to have a good broadcast. We've already messed. The starch is just taken out of my wind. We'll take a nothing worthwhile look at one of the most polarizing figures in professional wrestling. It is James Hellwig, aka the Ultimate Warrior. Groo, right off the bat. Now, please work with me. Some initial thoughts off the top of your head on the Ultimate Warrior.
Well, the Ultimate Warrior, if I had to put it into one sentence, the Ultimate Warrior, the crowd was his to lose. That's what I have to say about the Ultimate Warrior.
That's so deep. I don't even know what that means. Could you expand on?
I'll tell you what that means. He, with his look, with his entrance, with his intensity, with the way he did things, whenever that music hit, that crowd went crazy. And then he would get to the ring. So, the crowd loved him. They always loved him, no matter what. Wrestling fans, though, knew that he wasn't really very good. But he had the crowd eating out of the palm of his hand, and there's something to be said for that. That's pretty much half of what you're trying to do. He was over. He was 100% over every single time he went into the ring. Problem was, once he got into the ring, whether he was wrestling or talking, he would kind of take all of that momentum and sort of chuck it away. And unfortunately, I think that's become more of his legacy than the good things that he was able to do.
Well, I'll save my thoughts because I think this will be fodder for great conversation later on in the podcast. So let's get to it. James Brian Hellwig was born in 1959 in the city of Crawfordsville, Indiana, which is about 50 miles northwest of Indianapolis. Groo, he is the oldest of 5 children. Hellwig attended Indiana State University for 1 year. Prior to his career in professional wrestling, like most, Hellwig was an amateur bodybuilder. He competed in a number of NPC contests, standing for the National Physique Committee. I know, of course, you're familiar with the NPC, given your new workout regimen.
Absolutely.
He won the 1984 NPC Mr. Georgia. Hellwig started training with weights at the age of 11 years old, described himself as a small, insecure kid who wasn't into any sports. He moved to California, where after viewing bodybuilders, decided to take up the sport. His first contest took place in Florida, where he placed 5th. Groo, you may or may not be aware that he attended Life University in Marietta, Georgia, which is the big chiropractic college in Georgia. He was studying to be a chiropractor. He won in 1983 the AAU Coastal USA. He also won the Mr. Georgia title the following year. His last bodybuilding competition was in 1985's Junior USA's, where he finished 5th. In 1985, again, as I said, like most, he was training as a professional bodybuilder, and he was invited to join a group of bodybuilders to train as professional wrestlers. Part of this group was one Steve Borden. Do you know who Steve Borden is?
Steve Borden is, I believe, his moniker was... why is that song coming into my head? Every step... Sting. He was Sting. Right?
Oh, my God. What a setup, yes. That was Sting. Groo, I just wrote in my notes, it's funny that Jim Hellwig was studying to be a chiropractor. I feel like if I went to see The Ultimate Warrior for an adjustment, he'd probably break my neck and then probably call me a Jew bastard and insult me on the way out of his office.
Probably.
Well, we'll get into Jim Hellwig.
Let's put him in the Hall of Fame. Woo!
Well, let's get to it. He started off his professional wrestling career as Jim Justice Hellwig of Power Team USA, a group of bodybuilders trained by Red Bastian and Rick Bassman. He links up with Steve Borden, a.k.a. Sting, to form a tag team called the Freedom Fighters. Was part of the Continental Wrestling Association promotion run by Jerry Jarrett. They were a team of babyfaces at first, but part of my research said back in that territory you had a lot of babyface teams like the Rock and Roll Express and the Fabulous Ones. They were managed by one Dutch Mantel. They were quickly turned heel. Groo, you may remember that Dutch Mantel was in the WWE as Zeb Coulter, the We the People manager of Jack Swagger, who is now known as Jake Hager in AEW. Okay,
and did
no
Dutch
comments.
It's just funny how it's just funny. That's like a name we would come up with,
Which one? A Zeb Coulter or Dutch Mantel?
No. We would come up with, if he was Jack Swagger in WWE, he was what? He's what in AEW?
Well, I think his real name is Jake Hager or Hagar.
But we would come up with Like if we're talking about Jim Hellwig, we would be like, it rhymes with Tim Spellwig. It's like because the intellectual property of Jack Swagger belongs to the WWE or something. So that's
I know
funny.
that Swagger fought a couple of small fights in MMA, and now I think he does both. I think he wrestles in AEW and does an occasional UFC fight. I never really asked you, are you a UFC fan at all? You
Not
watch
at
any
all.
of that stuff?
Not at all.
Okay.
I just never was, never will be. I've seen
Coming
two
out
fights.
strong.
I've seen 2 fights. One of them was with you at a place that at a nice cozy restaurant with a great buffet.
You love embarrassing me. You love putting me on the spot.
Wait a second.
I mean, think about this. Last week, we're talking about sexual harassment. Hold on. Let me finish. We're talking about sexual harassment, and he goes, "Hey, can I tell a quick Evan Moody story?" And I'm sweating on the other side of the headphones, like, "Oh my God, what is he going to say about me?"
It was the
Shinzu
sushi buffet I was talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Remember?
I thought you were gonna.
Remember over that lobster roll? We got we saw that fight. It was the Brock Lesnar. It was the fight he lost.
Okay. By the way, Shinju was a great sushi buffet. My mom told me they closed.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Bastards.
Before the pandemic, they were. I mean, after because I went to both, and once I go there, you're out of business. You give me all you can eat.
There's not going to be another damn fish in the ocean. I mean, it's
yeah, unfortunately.
Well, all right. Well, so now we know Groo is definitely not an MMA fan. Later on, Sting and Jim Hellwig, they were named the Blade Runners in the Mid-South Wrestling promotion, which became the UWF. Hellwig was Blade Runner Rock, and Borden was Blade Runner Sting. According to Joseph Laurinaitis, a.k.a. Road Warrior Animal, UWF owner Bill Watts created the Blade Runners as a parody of the Road Warriors. They were part of the Eddie Gilbert's Hot Stuff International group.
Sounds like a parody of like the Wonder Twins from
well, the thing is, the Road Warriors have come out and said that the Ultimate Warrior, or initially, which is my next paragraph, he was originally known as when he became a singles wrestler, the Dingo Warrior, and Road Warriors have stated that the Warrior's Blade Runner gimmick was an attempt to present himself as a rip or an offspring of the Road Warriors. And I actually wrote in my notes, I didn't know that. That was interesting to me. I've never heard or read that allegation that the early Dingo Ultimate Warrior version was alleged to be a ripoff of the Road Warriors. Your thoughts? Do you see any similarities there? Because I didn't really see it that way. But
I mean, now that you mention it, it certainly seems that way. And I wouldn't. I know with the name alone, because back then they weren't yet really known as the Legion of Doom.
Well, I think the Legion of Doom grew was when they went to
WWE.
The WWF.
Right.
So when they were in the NWA Georgia, Florida, they were the Road Warriors. When they went to the WWF, they were the Legion of Doom, but they still had the Road Warrior moniker, but it was the Legion of Doom was the name of the team.
But the reason is, and I remember this, and I think, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is true, because Ultimate Warrior was already there, and they didn't want the Warrior crossover. So it sounds like it's just the opposite of what happened in the UWF. No?
I think if I remember, you might be correct about that. There was definitely something with Warriors, or if not the Road Warriors or somebody else. Although, didn't the Road Warriors... I don't know. I want to say the Road Warriors came after... Perhaps I'm wrong. I don't know the timeline.
They came after the Ultimate Warrior.
Okay,
definitely.
Well, that would make sense. That would make sense with your point.
Then. But let me ask you about UWF though. Was the name Dingo Warrior given to him, or did he come up with it, Hellwig?
Well, that's a good transition. He moved on to World Class Championship Wrestling, WCCW. There, he adopted the ring name the Dingo Warrior after a member of the WCCW locker room remarked that he looked like a warrior. This stood in contrast with the claim of Road Warrior Amarillo that he sifted the gimmick from the Road Warriors. So Warrior's narrative, it looks like, was that he came up with the Dingo Warrior on his own based on feedback from fellas in the locker room. the Road Warriors are saying that this whole thing was perhaps a rip of the Road Warrior gimmick.
Now that I think about it, I don't see it. They're aside from the name, they're completely different.
Yeah, like I always felt like the Road Warriors, their early sort of vibe, if you see their early gimmicks, was almost like Mad Max. They had the leathers with the studs and like sadomasochism in a weird way, that kind of thing. Where the Dingo Warrior was pretty much always painted face, tassels, like almost more of a superhero-y type of look.
Yeah, they were not really similar at all, only in name.
Well, Groo, Warrior was initially a heel in the WCCW. He was managed by the great Gary Hart, one of those early great managers.
Didn't he run for president?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we just watched something on Hulu about, who was that, Donna? I forget the girl that was part
Donna
of the
Rice.
whole... Yeah. She became very big in the internet, like porn, like the child safety movement. In sort of.
I'll do the research on that one.
Yeah, it was on Hulu. Some Barbara Walters special we watched. Nice. All right, let's get to some interesting stuff. All right, so Warrior became a face. He has an early feud with Rick Rude, who he later tangles with in the WWF. He switched managers to Percival Pringle III, or better known as Paul Bearer in the WWF. Sorry about that, Groo. And Warrior turns babyface after having a fallout with fellow Pringle proteges Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer and Matt Bourne, who was known as what or who, Groo, in the WWF.
Doink the Clown, the original Doink the Clown, Matt Bourne.
That is correct. So it looks like, Groo, based on my research, Warrior became the WCWA Texas Heavyweight Champion and then decided April 87 to leave WCCW to join the World Wrestling Federation, where he adopted the ring name The Ultimate Warrior. Warrior began appearing on house shows in early of June and was initially billed as the Dingo Warrior in house card promos by one Mean Gene Okerlund, but soon had the name modified. There is a dispute over who created the full Ultimate Warrior name. Bruce Pritchard has stated on his podcast that Vince McMahon had said, I don't know what a Dingo Warrior is, but there was already the modern-day Warrior. Who was the modern-day Warrior in WWF, Groo, around this time? Do you know what wrestler was given the name the modern-day Warrior?
No. Give me a hint.
I'm surprised.
Give me a hint?
He was a legend in Texas wrestling.
A legend in Texas wrestling. And when he was in the WWF at this time?
Yes. He had I won't say a very long run. He had probably a short and somewhat mixed run in the WWF. This was probably towards the downside of his career.
Barry Windham?
He had his great... Good guess. I'll give you what... No, I'll give you another one. Legendary Family. Family.
Von Erich.
Yes, Kerry Von Erich was the modern-day Warrior.
Okay.
So
and they looked alike. Wait a second. They looked alike. Didn't Kerry have those tassels too?
Let me give you a hint. When I start to talk again, wait, and then when I take a pause,
I'm sorry.
check. No, you know what? I want to say though that he may have had those bicep kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. I mean, they certainly both had very athletic looks. I mean, Kerry Von Erich was ripped. So.
Yeah. When did he become the Texas Tornado?
I don't know. I'll have to save that for the Kerry Von Erich podcast, which will be never of 2023. Although the Von Erich certainly would be a very interesting topic to mine, but let's get back to it. Vince said, we want you to be a warrior, but we don't want the dingo. So Warrior then proceeds to cut a promo and says that he's not this warrior or that warrior, but he is the Ultimate Warrior. So hence the beginnings of the Ultimate Warrior. So Groo, as we move to his WWF run, Again, another local regional star of sorts leaves for the bright lights and big money of WWF in New York. Has to be exciting time for Jim Hellwig as a local regional star at this point to leave and join Vince McMahon in the WWF.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he hit right away once they started showing him on television, it was a very quick climb up the ladder. But yeah, he definitely showed his enthusiasm. That's for sure. As far as his excitement to be there, with his ring entrances and his promos, and I remember seeing him for the first time and liking him. But back then we were more interested in the theatrics. We were never really looking at someone and say, "Oh, that's a bad spot," or he's not very good in the ring. That didn't matter as much to us. It was more about the character back then. Do you agree with that?
I do agree. I want to go over the factual stuff, and then I think we have a lot of time to talk about presentation and our thoughts on Jim Hellwig. But this is sort of right in your wheelhouse. We're in the WWF 1987. The Ultimate Warrior first competes on house shows, again as the Dingo Warrior, which then gets changed to the Ultimate Warrior. He defeats a series of jobbers. Listen to this all-star lineup. Steve Lombardi,
Brooklyn Brawler,
better known as the Brooklyn Brawler. Barry Horowitz, the one Jew before Goldberg, who had a run.
Wrong guy. I'm sorry.
No, Barry O was
Barry Orton.
Yes,
yeah.
And of course, one Iron Mike Sharp,
my favorite, Canada's greatest athlete.
Okay, so are you aware? Because I was looking up a little bit on Iron Mike Sharp when I started the research, and it specifically referenced Warrior's early run against the Jobbers. So, have you ever saw any shoot interviews about Iron Mike Sharp and his OCD?
No, I've never seen anybody talk about Iron Mike Sharp except
there's
me.
Not a lot, but so you'd probably be interested. First, he's known for getting into a very famous backstage fight with Billy Jack Haynes. Now, if you see Billy Jack Haynes shoot interviews today, he looks like a meth addict. Like he's.
Oh my God!
I know he's much older, but he's like the skinny rail of a guy with a Dutch boy, like a gray Dutch boy haircut. But apparently, the two of them got into a scrape. With Billy Jack Haynes, it was maybe some like kind of Superstars taping, and they were thrown together at the last minute. They didn't have time to sort of go over stuff, and Billy Jack Haynes felt that Iron Mike Sharp had that hand gimmick, and he was really working him stiff in the ring. So apparently, after the match, he confronted Iron Mike Sharp in the locker room, and from all accounts, I listened to a couple of different people, the Honky Tonk Man, Hillbilly Jim. Billy Jack Haynes beat the tar out of Iron Mike Sharp, and Iron Mike Sharp was known to be a tough guy, like a legit tough guy. So they had this legendary fight backstage, and then the other thing was Iron Mike Sharp was known, apparently, Groo, to work out in the arena for 3 hours before wrestling a 6-minute jobber match, and then he would take a shower for over an hour. And there's plenty of stories that claim he was locked out of arenas because they were done taping, the lights are off, and this dude's still in the shower, cleaning. And I just thought it was kind of interesting.
He has, he had his. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he had his, his things. What can you say?
To work with me. Wait
a minute.
It's like, hey, did you hear about? Hey, Groo, did you hear about Iron Mike Sharp and his OCD? All of a sudden, you hear crickets. Like,
I was thrown by the Billy Jack Haynes story. I could certainly believe that Billy Jack Haynes was a tough bastard, but
if you see these shoot interviews, Honky and Hillbilly Jim, Iron Mike Sharp was apparently a legit tough guy, could handle himself, perhaps even some fighting skills. And I have a feeling, though, Billy Jack, I don't think Iron Mike Sharp anticipated that a brawl was going to break out, that he got confronted, and perhaps he was just trying to talk to him, and then he got a stiff shot from Billy Jack.
Haynes probably
just put him in the full. Billy
Nelson.
Jack hit. Yeah, Apparently, Billy Jack Haynes was kind of a bore to deal with as well.
I heard that's what I heard. I have heard there's a lot of respect for Iron Mike Sharp, and he became a very successful wrestling trainer later on in life.
I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, as you said, Groo, the early Ultimate Warrior deal became known for his high-energy ring entrances, which featured him racing into the arena at full speed, bursting in the ring, and violently shaking the ropes up and down. He was also known for his distinctive pattern of face paint. So after several months of building him up on TV, beating jobbers, his first big sort of mini feud was with WWF rookie and future rival Rick Rude. And then, of course, he enters into his first real WWF feud early '88 against fellow strongman Hercules Hernandez, and the two, their back and forth led to a match at WrestleMania 4, where Warrior was victorious in his pay-per-view debut. Have you seen the first pay-per-view match of the Warrior under the WWF, WrestleMania versus Hercules Hernandez? I got thoughts on it. I actually watched the match yesterday. Groo, thoughts? Warrior at WrestleMania.
Yeah, not a good match, but a good introduction. It was it wasn't very long from my recollection. Hercules wasn't a very good wrestler, and when you put two not very good wrestlers in, not much is going to happen. That was not part of the tournament of WrestleMania 4, I don't believe.
No, that was not.
Right.
Don't oversmart me. All right, stick.
All right, the match.
Like that wasn't part of the Puerto Rican Intercontinental Championship.
The entrance and the theatrics definitely were good for the crowd, but the match itself was not good at all.
Yeah, so they specifically reference on the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD that this did not help either guy, especially the Warrior who's making his intro. You're taking two bodies. I agree with everything you said, except I'm probably a little bit more critical. You're taking two body guys who can't move that well in the ring and have a limited moveset. You put them against each other. There's a lot of posing, and it's just, I wrote this just a terrible, boring match in any era.
Yeah.
A lot of missed spots. The only bright spot, per se, is Bobby Heenan mugging it up for the camera as the manager, Hercules Hernandez, and his run-ins in different spots like that. And then, of course, Warrior gets revenge on him at the end of the match. But not a great way to intro the Warrior into the big time.
Right. 100% agree. Yeah. I mean, you can't put two guys... You know, Hercules and the Ultimate Warrior were known as people who needed to be in there with real pros to make them look better. So to put them two in the ring together for Ultimate Warrior's first pay-per-view match, probably, you know, in hindsight, not the best idea.
And we'll get back to those very telling comments later in the podcast. Less than a year after his WWF television debut, the Warrior, a surprise substitute for an injured Brutus the Barber Beefcake, comes out and wrestles and defeats the Honky Tonk Man in a 27-second squash match at the inaugural SummerSlam on August 29th, 1988, ending Honky's long reign of 454 days. I'm sure you love it, Groo. Groo, couple of thoughts on this, and where was the Honky Tonk Man vote of confidence? Where was that in the timeline of all this? That's the one thing I remember.
I could tell you exactly.
I remember as a kid liking the Honky Tonk Man, but that vote of confidence definitely got my attention.
I could tell you exactly about that. That was,
of course, you can.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really cool or really sad, but please tell me about the Honky Tonk Man vote of confidence.
Probably a bit of both, but as a Honky Tonk Man mark, which I am. Honky Tonk Man came in 1986, maybe late 85, but definitely by 86. Came in as a face and was planned to be a face. He was endorsed by Hulk Hogan, who was the champion at the time, of course. And but crowds just did not. They just didn't like this guy. I really don't know why. You know, it's just they didn't respond to him. Maybe it was the gimmick, whatever.
Could it be that he was just a cheap Elvis knockoff?
Yeah, but you know, at the time, like fans were becoming like smarter, because at the time it was like you cheered for those they told you to cheer for, and you booed for those they told you to boo. But when we were kids, anyway. But in any case, so then they turn that into a brilliant thing where Honky Tonk Man is literally going on TV and whining, saying, "Why are people booing me? I'm the greatest singer of all time. I'm the greatest wrestler of all time. Me and my buddy Hulk Hogan, we go down on our Harleys, we ride through the streets of Nashville and honky love." So Jesse the Body Ventura is doing the interview, and he says, "Well, why don't we do this vote of confidence thing where people could send postcards saying yes or no? Do you like him? Yes. Do you hate him? Or do you like him? Yes or no?" And they gave a mailing address. I know I sent mine in. Did you send yours in?
God.
I did. Of
No.
course I did. Of course I did. If they were smart, they would have made it like a 900 number. But they didn't do that. And of course, the results came out the next week. I'm sure they were somewhat fabricated, but Jesse Ventura revealed that it was way, way in the dislike column. And then Honky's sitting there like, he's like, "I can't believe this. I got to check this out. I'll be back next week to talk about it." And so, of course, next week he comes back with his new manager, Jimmy Hart, and thus begins his heel turn. And then I don't know if he beat Macho Man Savage for the Intercontinental title, and that was part of the feud where he smashed him over the head with the guitar on Saturday Night's Main Event. So that, and then they had a match. I forgot where the match was, honestly, but I don't even remember but that was Macho Man's face turn. So Honky Tonk Man beat him, and now Honky Tonk Man was the Intercontinental Champion through WrestleMania 3, where he fought Jake the Snake, won by cheating, and he did hold it for like a good year and a half. And then we get to SummerSlam 88, I believe, which was this match that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I believe
I think our next show is going to be the Andrew Gruthius vote of confidence. We'll have a website.
Oh, Jesus. You just opened up Pandora's book.
If we do me, we're losing already. So, but anyway, well, he does a couple of things, Survivor Series, and then in '89 begins. He enters a feud with Rick Rude. The feud was sparked at the 1989 Royal Rumble, where the two met in a super pose down. Certainly no.
Well, wait a second. Can I? I'm sorry to interrupt. I really am. But are we going to talk about that match at SummerSlam? Because that was with Honky Tonk Man. Because that was like his elevation to the
I understand that, but it was a 27-second squash match. I gave you the floor. Why didn't you put your comments in then?
Well, because I was answering your question.
Oh, this guy, what a broadcast partner. Well, how much can you say about a 27-second squash match? But go ahead.
Well, the 27-second squash match made the Ultimate Warrior, and that's what propelled him to the top. Did you watch it live?
Yes.
I did. I was going crazy. I thought it was amazing.
You know what I think?
I thought it was really exciting.
That's
how you get somebody over. You have this guy who's been the champion for a year and a half. You have a mystery opponent. You know this guy's not going to lose because he's been the champion all this time. Why lose to this new guy? And all of a sudden, here he comes running out like a maniac and just absolutely destroys him. And that got him over. I'm
going to call a little skepticism on that, because I think back then, I agree with you. They could have put anything in front of us. First of all, we were a lot younger. Now, I agree with you. I think today that would be something that would build somebody up. But I think we knew that the Warrior, he had all the intangibles that, from what we've read, Vince McMahon loved, which was basically he had a massive physique. He was chiseled in stone. I will speak about his wrestling skills later on in the podcast. I'm not going to not say that it didn't help him, but I like, now where I think like NXT does really well is they have the champions hold on, even if it's 6 months. It's not this hot shotting of the title. So when, for example, like a Shayna Baszler drops the title, the women's title. She's had it for a year and a half. It actually means a little something. I'm not going to sit there and say it just didn't help the Warrior, but I mean, clearly the Warrior was on the fast track. I don't know if necessarily him squashing Honky made him, but because I felt like I did have in my notes, when he beat Rick Rude for the Intercontinental title, watching it back on the network, that's where I felt like they started to move him towards main event status and prep him for the Hogan match. Okay. Can I move on and talk? Can I move on and talk to you a little bit about that, or
Absolutely.
Do you have more comments?
No.
I mean, do you have anything that? No, I'm not trying to be a jerk. Do you want to comment on what I said, or?
I think I agree with you. I think I agree with you, but I think I put more stock in that Honky squash than you do. Just because I
remember Honky being sort of what I would call a chicken-esque champ.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't have any proof of it, but I just feel like he never really cleanly beat people. He was always a count out or maybe a run in by somebody, and he just somehow was able to.
Right, and he was the guy that they built him up to be the guy that everybody wanted to see get the shit kicked out of him, and. Then here comes this nut job who comes in and does it in 27 seconds after he's been holding the title hostage for a year and a half. But the thing that I was going to say is I have never, besides Hogan at that time, I had never seen a crowd react like that, and that's what struck me. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
All right, well let's get to it. As '89 begins, Warrior, the IC champ, enters a feud with Rick Rude over the Intercontinental title. Again, we talked about how they tangled at the Royal Rumble, and this led to a match for the IC Championship at WrestleMania 5, where Rude pinned Warrior to win the title with the help of his manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan, who held Warrior's foot from outside the ring as he was being pinned. I'll throw it to my partner in crime, Andrew Gruthius. Are you familiar with their match at WrestleMania 5? Did you do any show prep? Any thoughts on the first Rude Warrior tangling at WrestleMania 5 for the Intercontinental Championship?
Yes, that's where you could really see for the first time that thing I was talking about before about the Ultimate Warrior really needing to be in there. If you're going to have a sustained match, he needs to be in there with somebody who knows what they're doing. And Rude, if you ask people about Rick Rude, there aren't many people better than Rick Rude. So that match was actually decent because of Rick Rude. I just don't like those endings though, because you're never going to believe that a little runt like Bobby Heenan, God love him, will be able to single-handedly hold down a guy the size of the Ultimate Warrior, keeping him from being able to pin out. I hate it when they do that. I'd rather see him get like hit in the head with like a cane or something.
Wasn't there something with a bar? Didn't he hit him? Maybe I'm wrong. I thought there was. Oh, he used a Rude, choked him out with a steel bar, so hence he was weakened. Look, I agree with you. I don't mind it. Actually, don't mind it even today. What I would mind is the big blow-off match. If they're gonna, so they go into a feud. So the first one is WrestleMania, which may or may not be a little weird, but when you get to the blow-off, the ending, I like a definitive winner. And I do agree, I guess, because I have been on record saying WrestleMania should be, for the most part, definitive wins.
Yeah, but this was WrestleMania.
This is back, I was 18, so I was young at the,
you want to know an interesting question, though, is because a lot of times, they had done it before with Savage. They take the Intercontinental title away and move him straight up towards the heavyweight championship.
But you don't think that they do that?
Oh no, I know they do that. So what I'm saying is, remember, this is WrestleMania 5 you're talking about. Main event for WrestleMania 6, which you'll definitely get to.
Go ahead. We know
was versus Hogan for the championship. Okay. So obviously this was in their plans. I'm with you. I don't like to see the title change hands like that. But if you pin him cleanly, okay, if Rude pins him cleanly, that kind of hurts him for that momentum. He's got to be robbed of it, don't you think?
Well, I mean, obviously, right. Don't you? You're saying you're sort of protecting Rude and you're protecting Warrior with the finish.
Yeah,
I mean,
like to get a clean win. I'd rather see a disqualification. But they needed to take the title off him. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Well, let me go to my thoughts. I watched, and I agree with you somewhat on your thoughts. I actually gained an appreciation for ravishing Rick Rude, who really should have been given a much bigger push. He got a big push, but that was a guy who could have been a main eventer even in the old school WWF. He was a very good wrestler. He had a great look. He's another guy. He was even a little bit different because he was lean. He wasn't a massive muscle head. He did look like a Chippendales kind of dancer. He was very lean, thin, edgy.
You know what the problem is, though?
Go ahead.
Well, just wait a second. Because
this guy has no respect.
I do, because it speaks to exactly what you're saying right now. So, Rick Rude...
I didn't even finish my thoughts, but go ahead. Let me hear it. Go ahead.
Back then, what was the definition of you being in the heavyweight picture?
What do you mean by that?
That means like there's only room for two people at a time to be in that heavyweight thing. Somebody and
I hear you, brother.
Somebody Hulk Hogan.
I'm just saying.
No, you're right.
I'm just saying that Rick Rude
did have. Rude had his short feud with Hogan. Okay, and then once Hogan beat him, then it was on to Hogan and the next guy. That's probably why a lot of people don't like Hogan, and I get it, and they're right. An obvious exception was Savage because they just kept having back and forths with him and Hogan. But Rude got to where so many people had gotten before, had his feud, and then went back to mid-card status. Unfortunate.
Okay, but all I'm saying is, when I look back on that classic Hogan era, Savage, Rude, Ted DiBiase, Mr. Perfect, these were guys that perhaps Savage got a run, but and it really wasn't even that long. But nonetheless, I look at a guy like Rick Rude and I said he had the skills to have been, if not 1A. He could have been a long-standing Intercontinental champion. He could have been a massive heel.
Yes.
Could have, the tights with the painted stuff on it was really kind of ahead of his time. In terms of the match, what I thought was the Warrior, to me, at this match, he's the most roided. He's so massive.
Yeah.
He can barely move here. And Rude is, selling all over the place for the Warrior. And again, this is where you start to see Warrior has a very limited moveset. All he does is scream and he bangs and he does that thing with his hands and bear hugs. And then the other thing I wrote is you really begin to appreciate the production of the WWF back in the day. The announcers, Jesse, Gorilla, they're spinning their rapport. It's so enjoyable that I'm sort of forgetting that the match in the ring is really not great. And you got Bobby Heenan with run-ins, the announcers framing the action. So the whole presentation is not bad, but it's not a great match, and it's nothing to do with Rick Rude. The Warrior just has a limited moveset.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, what everybody seems to say the same thing. He runs into the ring like a maniac, and by the time shakes the ropes and runs around the whole thing, and by the time the bell rings, he's out of steam. That's what kind of everybody says, with one exception, and I'll bring that up later. One
exception to the match, his best match.
Yeah, I consider to be his best matches.
I know what you're going to say anyway. So
all right. Well, when we get there, you'll see.
It's a paint by numbers, and the sum is not equal to its parts.
Hey-o!
Moving on, at SummerSlam, the Ultimate Warrior defeats Rude to regain the title and become a two-time Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. One of the things, I did watch this match as well. I'll get to I hate when they bring the challenger out last. I don't like that. I want my champion, good guy or bad guy, I want my champion to come out second. So they bring out the Warrior last. So it's almost like you could read the tea leaves. Where I come from, the champion always comes out first. This was a better match. I'll give the Warrior some credit here. This was a better match than the WrestleMania tilt. It's longer, so it maybe allowed even the Warrior a little bit more time. Rude is setting the pace. They really sell the Rude Awakening as the finisher. And I don't know if you've seen the match. Tony Schiavone and Jesse the Body, their stuff is just priceless.
Yes.
Pushing the Warrior as a brute force. You got the Roddy Piper run-in that kind of distracts Rude. Warrior press slam, and you got the Warrior as the champ. But Tony Schiavone, Warrior goes on the top rope to do like a dive. You would have thought it was at a Kiss concert. He's like, "Oh my god!" Totally just overselling it. But anyway, Warrior defeats Ravishing Rick Rude. A better match, not great. He's your IC champ.
Yes, and again, the crowd is in the palm of his hand. And that's why they keep pushing him. That's why he keeps coming back. He keeps leaving, then coming back, because no matter what, that music hits, he runs down, the crowd's going crazy. No matter what. I mean, that's the one thing that I can remember from every single match that he had. Yes, this match was better, but it was still. Did you say? Now, I watched the other match, the Mania 5 match. I did not watch this one before this thing. Did you say that they brought out Rude first or the Warrior first?
They brought out Rude first. He's the champ.
All right. Because I was going to say maybe if they had brought out Ultimate Warrior first, he would have had time to recuperate during Rude's entrance. Then that way they could have a good match. But instead, he's just running in and they're starting, and of course he's winded. But no, this match was better. Maybe it was. It was several months later, more training, more steroids, maybe it was something like that. Or maybe they just put more work into it. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of unexplained phenomena, like those casket matches.
Yeah. Thank God for Ravishing Rick Rude. Anyway, Ultimate Warrior has
something, wasn't he? But don't you think that he would get into the ring and do that opening thing? What I'd like to have... I mean, he was over as hell, man, wasn't he? Rick Rude?
You talking about Ravishing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I just said I felt like he could have had even more of a run, but it is what it is. Ultimate Warrior has a short feud with Andre the Giant, and we then go to his WWF World Heavyweight Championship run, 1990 to 91. Warrior begins to receive a push as the WWF's main event successor to Hulk Hogan, who had remained the WWF's biggest star throughout the 80s. Following a few confrontations with Hogan, most notably at the 1990 Royal Rumble, where the two guys ended up in the ring, and a couple of with the crisscrosses, and they hit each other, and they get the stare down, and
the
Warrior was written in as Hogan's... Yeah, you're right, as Hogan's opponent for the main event of WrestleMania 6 at the Sky Dome in Toronto. The match was billed as the Ultimate Challenge, Groo, as both Hogan's WWF World Heavyweight Championship and the Warrior's IC Championship were on the line. Warrior ends up pinning Hogan after a Warrior splash to become the only wrestler to hold both championships simultaneously. Warrior vacates the IC Championship, which then Mr. Perfect wins in a tournament, as the WWF rules prohibit a wrestler from holding both titles. Groo, thoughts on the match itself? Two babies going at it for really, I think, the first time for a main event at WrestleMania. Sky Dome, Hogan Warrior, thoughts?
Let me go backwards. Why have a title for title match if they have a policy where not one person can hold both belts? So just throwing that question out there.
It's the WWF. It's come on, it's selective reality.
Just call me Mr. Tito. All right. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning. What a build-up that this thing had. This thing was picture perfect from the moment in the Royal Rumble. It was actually sold. You know who sold this feud and really made it work? Jesse Ventura. The way he called these things every single time, from the Royal Rumble when they both, I think Hogan came in, Warrior was already in there. Warrior's eliminating people, Hogan's eliminating people, then they run into each other like back to back, turn and face each other, crowd's going nuts, and Jesse is just off the charts here. And even as they're doing nothing, as they're crisscrossing in the thing, nobody moves, this, that, and it's for a good 2 minutes. It's really intense. And then they knock each other out, and then somebody else comes in, and then that little part is over. Then the next week, obviously, they're going to team up on Saturday night's main event. And I'm embarrassed that I forgot who they faced, but I feel like maybe it was Ted DiBiase. I don't remember. But in any case, what happens is Ultimate Warrior is just going crazy. He's clotheslining everybody, and Jesse is calling it. He's like he's building it up from the beginning, saying, "Can they trust each other? Can they trust each other?" And then Warrior accidentally clotheslines Hogan, and then they get face to face, and Jesse's eating it up, and that sets up the WrestleMania match, the Ultimate Challenge. And it was great because they still gave it a couple of months to build up for people to take sides. They were interviewing different wrestlers, like thinking about what they thought, like whose side they were on, like who they thought would win. I remember going to a house show at Madison Square Garden where Warrior was the main event against a jobber, but the crowd reaction that he got in that building was amazing. Now, of course, I was rooting for Hogan, but you couldn't take away from the power that this guy had, and the way they built up this feud was absolutely perfect. If I have to, if that's really the only.
What were your thoughts on the match? What were your thoughts on the match itself?
The match, from a wrestling perspective, it's not a very good match, but from an intent, it's same like Hogan Andre. It's the people in it, and every move counts. Every look, every gesture, every punch, everything counts. And I didn't like the ending because
neither did I.
I didn't like the.
I did not like the ending.
I didn't like the ending, but the match itself, because of the build-up and because of the characters and because you really didn't know who was going to win, you really didn't know. At least I didn't. Made the match itself incredibly exciting. It's not a good wrestling match, but it's great theater. That's what I'll say about it. What? You hear
the ending is a drag. I mean,
yes, I did say that. I said the ending is a drag. Yeah.
Oh well, you've had 6 minutes of unfettered opinion.
Oh, wait a minute.
Hulk. He hulks up, misses a leg drop, and then that voila splash. I just thought it was.
I agree. I didn't like the ending.
Kind of a drag ending.
But you know what? I get why they did it. They wanted each guy to do their finisher, and the winner gets the edge. So I get it. It's a drag of an ending, but how else are you going to end it while saving both of them? Because if you remember, after the match, they were focused more on Hogan passing the torch to Warrior, and then watching Hogan leave in that cart and saying Hulkamania will live forever, while Warrior is celebrating in the ring and his music is playing. The cameras are on Hogan leaving. Isn't
that a problem?
Yes. That's why, to me, that's why this thing didn't work. Afterwards, the match itself worked, but Warrior was not, well, as we'll get to, I'm sure, it was not meant to be. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, well, yeah, I know what you mean. After WrestleMania, the Warrior successfully defends his championship against Haku, Mr. Perfect, Ted DiBiase. At SummerSlam, he retains the title over Rick Rude in a steel cage match. Macho Man Randy Savage was also introduced as a potential rival after interfering at the main event for a title match at the behest of Ted DiBiase. And this is where we get to it. January 91, Warrior faces Sergeant Slaughter at the Royal Rumble. At the time, as we've talked about in other podcasts, Slaughter's gimmick at the time was a traitor who had betrayed America by aligning himself with an Iraqi military general, General Adnan. In the context of the Gulf War, this made Sergeant Slaughter one of the most hated heels at the time. After rejecting an earlier request to grant a title shot to Savage, Sensational Sherry interjected herself in the Warriors Championship match to distract him. Her interference eventually led to a Savage sneak attack where he struck Warrior over the head with a metal scepter, which allowed Slaughter to pin the Warrior to win the title. Warrior went on to feud with Savage, and of course Hogan went on to feud with Sergeant Slaughter at WrestleMania 7. Warrior goes to face Randy Savage at WrestleMania. This culminated in a career-ending match at WrestleMania 7. Warrior wins, forcing Randy Savage to retire. So, Groo, I'm sure you have this match memorized from opening bell to final weepy finish. WrestleMania 7. Ultimate Warrior versus the Macho King.
Yes.
Thoughts? I know you're going to tell me phenomenal theater, better than Uncut Gems. It should be nominated for 6 Academy Awards. And here's where you're going to tell me that this is the Ultimate Warrior's greatest match.
Well, it is, but not because of the Ultimate Warrior, because of Randy Savage.
Let me just drink my Starbucks Freezy. Yeah. All right, let me hear it. All right, let's get back in focus. Let me hear your thoughts on the match.
Well, it was interesting because the beginning of this match, as Bobby Heenan pointed out when Bobby Heenan was commentating, this was the first time we'd never really seen Warrior not run to the ring. He walked to the ring.
That's true.
And probably because the match was supposed to go on for a while, so he needed to conserve his strength. I'm putting.
He didn't want to blow up. He didn't want to be blown up. Yeah.
That's the only explanation. And it did go on for a while. It was like a 25, 30-minute match. And it was nonstop thrills. It was excitement personified. I know I sound like Gorilla Monsoon there, but it was because, again, you didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, could we picture Macho Man Randy Savage retiring?
But
go ahead.
Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
You seem to be talking in reference to when you were 15 watching this match. You may or may not have watched them, but I want to say today, your thoughts on that WrestleMania 7 match.
I still look at it today, and I still love it for the same reasons. And I still watch it all the way through, even with and it's interesting how the Ultimate Warrior wins, but the focus goes on Macho Man Savage, and the same thing happened when Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan for the championship.
Yeah.
There's something strange there, but the match itself was thrilling, and with everybody doing their finishes and kicking out, and then questioning whether they, like Savage did it too. Savage hit him with like 5 elbows, and he kept kicking out. So Savage was like, "What the hell's wrong with me?" You didn't like that?
I don't. Yeah, no, because you've just, that's an era in which the finishing maneuver was not discounted, and I'm not saying. But to go 5 in a row and then have him kick out. Now, if you want to hit an elbow, go for a pin, kick out, get angry, dash up, and do another elbow.
Yeah.
But to do 5 elbows in a row, this was his standard setup finishing move. And for Warrior just to kick out, where do you go from there?
Yeah, but also he gave him a couple of press slams and he kicked out of those. There was a ref bump, so the ref was knocked out.
There's always a ref bump in a Warrior match.
But again. And I think the announcers sort of alluded to this because their careers were on the line. Maybe you could suspend that thing a little bit. I didn't mind that because of that. Because if this was a regular match like they do today, Brock Lesnar gives 5 F5s and Roman Reigns still kicks out. That's bullshit.
And I don't like it.
Me
I
neither.
don't like it. I don't like it today.
This was a little bit different because it's got that extra thing of the career on the line. WrestleMania, I bought it with that. I don't buy it. I don't buy it when they do it now. I bought it with that, and it just added to the excitement. And you
bought it because you don't listen though. I feel like you're referencing what you felt when you were,
and I feel the
17.
same way now. I said I feel the same way now.
You watched that match and all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to be fair, I don't watch. It's a different product than the kind of product is today. So I'm watching it with the mindset of where I was when I was 15, but I still look at pro wrestling the same way. I do. Think about it.
What?
What?
Go ahead. I'm trying to get my point in about the match.
Well,
I think actually you have the mindset of a 15-year-old.
I definitely do. I mean, I don't want I haven't watched Raw in 4 weeks, but if they announced that Hulk Hogan was going to be on Monday, I'm watching. I mean, that's just me. I know it's my problem. It's a big problem, and I'm in therapy about it. But you have
Raw was not bad this week.
I heard, and I am going to watch it on your say so. But my point is that I want to hear what. I gotta watch them. I'm watching them make out right now. All right, go keep doing it. Keep going.
You want to give Groo a show?
Where's Rick Rude's theme music? Dun,
yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Hi, Marie. How you doing? Hi.
Hi, Groo.
Hi.
Hey, please, can we get back to WrestleMania? Can we get back to WrestleMania? Here's what I like to give you my thoughts. I agree with you. The focus is really on Savage. What they did do is they put increased stakes in the match. You have Elizabeth sitting at ringside. That's a nice move right there. You're not really sure what's going to happen. Obviously, she's related to the character. Couple things I noticed. Savage gets a great reaction from the crowd as a heel when they introduce everybody. If you hear it, that's an era when the good guys got cheered and the bad guys get booed, and you hear a very tweener reaction for Savage, which surprised me, which tells me this guy was just massively popular, even as a heel. So I noticed that off the bat. I did my notes, no running to the ring for the Warrior, and then of course, I know if you like this one, they pan into the Warrior's ass for some reason because he has new tights. So they do this tight camera shot of his butt, and I'm like, I didn't know how to feel about that.
Wasn't it Savage's face on his ass?
I was both intoxicated and repulsed at the same time.
Wasn't it like Macho Man's face on his butt?
I'm not sure, but to me, Savage is the ever consummate pro wrestler here. He makes all the spots. Sherry was so good. Her run-ins are just so perfectly timed. The way she expresses herself, the ring psychology. Macho kicking out of the Warrior splash. That whole part where Warrior is talking to like the gods, so stupid. Even back then,
I liked it.
He can't pin Savage, and he's like, what?
The character was supposed to be insane, and that was built into.
I don't know if he was supposed to be insane. He was supposed to somehow get his power from some mythical Norse creature, some old guy on a centaur looking down at the sky.
Hey, if Gorilla Monsoon is going to say he's looking at the guy upstairs,
Groo, I'm giving you my legit thoughts and criticism.
I know.
Okay. And then I thought the ending, I think he just does 3 shoulder tackles and he just puts his foot on him. It just came out of nowhere. You had this long match and then it was this weird conclusion, which it just seems to be a running theme of for me, all of the Ultimate Warrior's big matches. And I guess I wrote in my notes, Groo, perhaps the Warrior's best match. I mean, is that his best match in your opinion?
It's his, I believe it's his best match. Yes, and he's got a second. I
actually thought the Warrior. On in his career. I thought the Warrior was a little bit better actually in the Rick Rude, the second match. I guess it was at SummerSlam.
Yeah, that's the one I didn't watch. I'll have to rewatch that one, and you might be right.
I think generally speaking, that match is considered to be the best match for the Warrior. But I agree. I think I didn't do a lot of research online, but. So I did reference a couple of websites. Most of them said it was really due to Savage and his consummate professionalism that really put the Warrior over or made the Warrior look good.
Yeah, we said the same thing about Rick Rude.
Okay, well, let's get to it. After the WrestleMania match with Savage, Warrior takes a short program with The Undertaker and then has a program with Jake the Snake Roberts. And this sets up the stage for a feud with the Warrior and Roberts. However, that feud never takes place as the Warrior was involved in an alleged pay dispute with WWF owner Vince McMahon over the SummerSlam main event, where the Warrior was teamed with Hulk Hogan in a handicap match against Sergeant Slaughter, Colonel Mustafa, and General Adnan. So, Groo, this is where it gets interesting. On July 10th, 1991, Warrior was sent a letter by Vince McMahon requesting inclusions in his new WWF contract. The Warrior wanted $550,000 for performing at WrestleMania 7, which that was the WrestleMania that featured Hogan and Slaughter in the main event tilt. He wanted a guaranteed number of working days, travel accommodations, and a higher percentage of merchandise sales. The letter remarks that he felt the $550,000 offer was fair and that the Warrior meant as much or more to the show than as Hulk Hogan. He ended the letter with, "Whatever your decision, I can and will live with it. Till then, I remain home with one who cares." The WWF responded on July 13th, Groo, agreeing to the $550,000 payoff for WrestleMania 7, a higher royalty rate, and promising no other WWF performer would be paid more than him on WWF pay-per-views. Vince McMahon notes in the letter, "I would like to express my deepest appreciation and admiration for you as a performer, as a member of the WWF family, as a man, and as my friend." Okay, this is where it gets super interesting. Following the WWF annual SummerSlam event, Warrior then got another letter dated August 26, 1991 from Vince McMahon saying the Warrior was suspended effective immediately. Among other things, McMahon said, "You threatened to stay home, thereby not appearing at Titan's major summer pay-per-view event, SummerSlam. I had no choice but to accede to your exorbitant demands. This was a serious mistake on your part." McMahon later testified that the only reason the company agreed to the contract was to acquiesce to his demands temporarily to ensure Warrior would perform at the SummerSlam event. Upon receiving the letter from the WWF, Warrior refused the suspension and left. Warrior was formally sent a letter of resignation to the WWF in October of 91. The WWF refused to accept the letter, Groo, since the Warrior was under contract until September of 1992. Groo, in reading this absolutely stunning turn of events, clearly Warrior perhaps overplayed his hand. We see that Vince, a.k.a. Mr. McMahon, is not above playing dirty with some of his talent. Perhaps blame on both sides. Groo, we report, you decide. The Warrior and the WWF tangle over pay. Warrior gets an early win and then gets the smackdown by Vince McMahon and the WWF. The floor is yours.
Well, the most important thing is that we were there to witness this entire thing.
Yes.
Yes, but we'll get to that in a minute.
We didn't know, I mean, obviously we didn't know about the circumstances at that time.
But I do remember when we watched the match, we were pretty close, and seeing Warrior run out of the ring to the back, like as soon as it was over, and then it was basically Hogan and Sid Justice celebrating in the ring. It was. I remember we both questioned that, where's Warrior? But in any case, we didn't know what was going on. But in any case, everything that you just said, I think that the WWF at the time made the wrong decision. I think they should have fired him right away, and they should have made that event Hulk Hogan and Sid Justice versus the Sergeant Slaughter. I
find that very, very interesting. If I can I'm curious because you seem to be a Warrior. I don't know if you're a mark, but you're certainly appreciating.
I'm not a Warrior mark.
Perhaps. All right, but I think there's a level of appreciation that perhaps I may not have. We'll discuss our final thoughts and legacy at the end of the podcast. You don't think any good businessman negotiates? I mean, or you feel like he tried to hold
negotiate. Yes, you negotiate. You don't threaten to stay the fuck home.
Okay, interesting.
To me, that's it. And if I were Vince, I don't know what Vince's financial position was at the time. It certainly wasn't what it is now. But I would have said, you know what, the hell with it. You're not holding me hostage, and it's not going to cost me. I'm not going to pay $500,000 just to get you at this one show. I would, I wish they would have fired him right then and there. And they could have, but they had their reasons. So that's bullshit. You don't do that. You don't stage a walkout unless and say, unless I'm the highest paid person here, I'm not going to show up to work. Well, guess what? If I don't show up to work because I'm pissed off about something, the next letter I get is a pink slip. All right? So what makes him able to do that and expect to still have a job?
What do you think of my comments that clearly the Warrior overplayed his hand?
100%. Except, actually, wait a minute though. He kind of got what he wanted, so maybe he didn't.
Well, here's my thing. I said he gets the early win, but then he gets the smackdown by Vince. I can't blame Vince. I think Vince is a guy that always thinks of the fans first, rightly or wrongly. So I'm going to pay your crazy demands, but I'm going to make a mental note. I'm going to get back at you at a later time when things are. He promised a main event, and he did deliver. Yeah. Kept the fans happy, but clearly, I just found it stunning that he issued a letter in which was very complimentary to Jim Hellwig, and you're part of the WWF family, and you're going to, the highest merch percentage and guaranteed dates. And then, 2 days later, he fired off another letter saying,
"Turns heel.
Your ass is fired." Yeah, almost.
That was right out of the J.R. Ewing playbook right there. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
I've only heard of one other instance in which Vince was held up prior to a pay-per-view and that he did pay, and he also fired the guy the next day, which would be, and I don't know what pay-per-view, but it was Jeff Jarrett versus China. It was for the Intercontinental Championship, and Jarrett loses the belt. It was like an in-your-house match. They had pots and pans, and they kind of played off the gimmick of the intergender. But China was getting her big push, and she actually beats Jarrett, and he went to WCW the next day. It was sort of the last big free agent that the WCW brought in for the Monday Night Wars.
Was that after Owen Hart died?
Yes.
Because I remember this differently.
He had a tag team with Owen.
Yeah.
They were managed by what's his name's wife, Deborah McMichael.
No, but the reason that I'm remembering this differently because I remember watching that match knowing that Jarrett was leaving.
Well, remember we had the dirt sheets back then, those websites, but he held up Vince, and I think he got whatever payout for the pay-per-view. So the WWF delivered on their match.
Is that something we knew then, though? I remember knowing he was leaving. I don't remember ever hearing that he was holding out for more money.
I have a feeling I remember knowing that I think this was his last match, but that's a good question.
Definitely knew that, and I remember us. I think we were watching it together because I think we were still in Florida, and we were commending Jeff Jarrett. We're like, he's coming on. He's going to put the guy over, and then he's going to go, and that's the way to do it. That's what Bret Hart didn't do, But hearing this, I've never heard there was a holdout until just now. So, you live, you learn.
All right, well, we'll do a little homework for the next podcast. We'll clarify it, but I'm almost pretty sure that went down. Now, I do know Jarrett was a guy in the Attitude Era that I believe Stone Cold had an issue with him, and they wanted to perhaps, and I think Steve Austin behind the scenes put a kibosh on some kind of perhaps main event push.
I did hear that.
Jarrett.
Yes.
All right, so Hulk Hogan's leaving the WWF. He's out mid 92 and early 93. So Vince McMahon goes back to his playbook, contacts the Ultimate Warrior about returning. The Ultimate Warrior makes his comeback at WrestleMania 8 to rescue Hulk Hogan from a beatdown at the hands of Sid Justice and Papa Shango. Upon his return, he received a degree of creative control over his bookings. Of course, I think it was part of our opening package, the somewhat humorous storyline with Papa Shango, in which Papa Shango cast a witch doctor spell over Warrior, causing him to convulse and vomit in very odd colors on television, which makes for a funny visual. And Warrior said that he hated the story and had no creative control over it. I think the other thing I remember about the Warrior return was that when he came back, much thinner, perhaps off steroids, and there was the legend that somehow the Ultimate Warrior was dead, and this was some kind of like weird replacement or twin or something like that.
Yeah, I remember actually watching it live at WrestleMania, and I won't lie, when that music hit, I marked out.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. He came down, and we couldn't really see. He was running so fast, we couldn't really get a good look at him. So we're still cheering. We're like, "Oh my God, it's the Ultimate Warrior!" And he's beating the hell out of everybody. And then finally, when they close up into the ring, we're like, "Wait a minute, who is this guy? That's not him." Like, it really didn't look like him. His hair was much different. He had like a weird, like almost a long-haired bowl cut, and definitely much less toned. But evidently it was him.
Okay, now
but it was cool. It was cool.
Perhaps let me speak. Perhaps this was revisionist history, but I feel like for the Warrior this time around was not a massive main event pop like he had in the past. Meaning, this first return, which is the return of a couple, when he did that run-in at the main event at Mania, I didn't see it. I didn't watch it for the podcast. So, but am I correct, or was it like still massive Hulk Hogan pop?
It was a huge pop. Definitely a huge pop. I remember.
Screw
it was, but it was downhill from there. That's the thing. It was the element of surprise was there, and it worked. And they were clearly trying to offset the fact that they couldn't have Hogan or Sid Justice lose cleanly, so they had to pull a rabbit out of their hat, and it worked. It wasn't good, but it still worked for the crowd.
Yeah. Well, that's the WrestleMania which they screwed up, because that should have been Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan, no doubt about it. You can't argue any other point to me, because to me, when you got an opportunity to put the two biggest names together in the ring, you got to pull the trigger.
Yep.
Maybe it would have been a crappy match, but that you got to pull the trigger. I'm sorry. You want a cup of coffee or something?
No. I don't even think that. I don't even.
The guy's yawning like.
No.
Nothing better than looking at your podcast partner and going, he's like, God, is this thing almost over?
I love how your big tough guy's sipping that little coffee through his straw, like
a little sippy.
Yeah.
Well, look, Warrior is back, Groo, but more controversy in his WWF future. He's teamed up with Savage as the Ultimate Maniacs to face Ric Flair and Razor Ramon at the Survivor Series, but it never happens. Weeks before the event, the Warrior is released for disputed reasons and replaced by Mr. Perfect. So, Groo, part of my research says the initial plan for Warrior's 1992 return was to eventually give him another run with the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. However, his return coincided with the government's crackdown on steroids in wrestling. The Ultimate Warrior was admittedly a heavy user of steroids during his professional wrestling career. In a book that we know very well, I believe we both have copies, perhaps, Sex, Lies, and Headlocks, by ESPN writer Sean Assel, stated that Canadian chemist Mauro Di Pasquale, boy, that doesn't sound like a stereotypical Italian name, Di Pasquale, he had been hired in June to monitor the WWF's new drug testing program, and was known for being very tough towards talent who failed a drug test. Reportedly, the Ultimate Warrior was nailed for steroid usage in September of '92 and was able to successfully persuade McMahon, who was under federal scrutiny at the time for allegations of illegally supplying steroids to some of his wrestlers, to release the Ultimate Warrior from the company. However, in the Ultimate Warrior, the Ultimate Legend documentary, Vince McMahon claims that it was Warriors experimenting with growth hormone, same difference, which led to his departure. Warrior was suspended and in return skipped dates as he took offense to McMahon's action. Warrior left the company on November 21st, 1992. So he makes a big return at WrestleMania, and some 5 or 6 months later, he's gone.
But in that 5 or 6 months, he did have a good run with Savage because a build up to the Ultimate Maniacs thing, they had a match against each other. I believe at SummerSlam, which is my pick as the Ultimate Warrior's second best match. They're both baby faces and they're going at it, and you'd enjoy that match. You should take a look at it.
SummerSlam, what is it? SummerSlam 92?
I guess so. I think it was SummerSlam. It was. I'm
going to take a look on it.
Yeah, it was. It was really well done.
I tooled around on the network. I watched a whole bunch of Warrior matches, and then I watched last night Chapter 4 and 5 of the Ultimate Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior. The Undertaker's what is it? Last Ride documentary.
What'd you think of it?
I thought it was good, but I won't say it was great. I felt like it didn't really mind. I mean, the whole thing, every episode was like this. Here, I'm going to save everybody 60 minutes of your time. I'm 54 years old. I'm old. I don't know if I could do this again. Wife, I love my husband, but I don't want him to wrestle anymore. It's really tough. I'm a professional wrestler at heart. I don't want to give this up. For example, the Saudi stuff with Goldberg was really interesting. I would have loved to hear Goldberg.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have known his thoughts on the match.
And they skipped over. They didn't talk about their little tussle. I heard that. Remember, they had a little tussle about it.
Well, supposedly they got into an argument backstage. I don't know if they got into a physical altercation.
Yeah, why did they just? They didn't even
he was very conciliatory towards Goldberg on the documentary. I just felt like part great, all the Boneyard match stuff. That's great, and that's the stuff I love. But it was like the same theme, and I guess I should have known. But I don't know. For 5 episodes, it was like, I'm old. I don't know if I could do this anymore.
Right.
I had a good match. Let's get the wheels turning. I had a bad match. Maybe I can't do this anymore.
And then Vince
is gonna hug him real hard and hit him like this. I love you, buddy. It's just I did enjoy it because the WWE does great documentary work. Their guys are just phenomenal, and gals. The production is second to none. It just, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just felt like it was telling the same story over again.
You're not wrong at all. It was like then Michelle McCool comes on. I love him so much.
I know,
which is amazing because I only met him 3 days ago. But we love each other so much, and I don't want him to get hurt. But at the same time, that alimony check that I'm going to need in a couple of years, I got to make sure that gets inflated. I mean, I totally read the subtext there, so you're 100% right. I did enjoy it for what was there, but yeah, it did get repetitive. Didn't need 5 episodes to say the same thing.
I would say right, and I would say like my excitement for the first 1 or 2 was great. And then by episode 4 or 5, I was still interested, but I was like, I kind of knew it was a little bit, dare I say, boring or repetitive.
I would rather have seen him spend the first 1 or 2 going through his early career. They didn't really spend any time on that.
A little bit. They had some stock footage with Paul Bearer and some interview stuff. How they,
AKA William Moody.
Yes. Well, let's get back to it, Groo. Let's see here. Okay. So Warrior leaves November 92 through July 95. The Warrior was semi-retired. He did start the short-lived Warrior University, a professional wrestling school based in Scottsdale, Arizona, the home to Pops Moody. I don't know, Groo. I would say with a good amount of security that no one from the Warrior University actually did anything in professional wrestling or did something of note. I can't imagine the Ultimate Warrior being your professional wrestling instructor, but hey, I found that kind of ironic.
But there are many graduates of Warrior University who teach at Coral Glades High School down the street, so I heard about that.
Well, 1996, we have yet another return to the World Wrestling Federation. Warrior returned to the WWF on March 31st, 1996, defeating one Hunter Hearst Helmsley at WrestleMania 12, which pretty much a squash match. And then he comes on Monday Night Raw the following week, where he sort of gives another rambling in-ring interview where he credits the voices of the Warrior, and he's interrupted by Goldust, and now we've got a Intercontinental Championship at In Your House 7. But more importantly, just reflecting on the squash of Triple H, who went on to have a legendary WWE career. Watching it now, 96, Ultimate Warrior no-sells everything and beats Triple H kind of quickly. Just thoughts on reflecting back on that match.
Well, the match is obviously terrible. Knowing what we know now about Triple H, it's even more terrible. Back then, he was still kind of a mid-carder, and we didn't care that much about him. He was certainly not a jobber, but, look, they needed to make a splash with the Warrior, and I guess they did, but they didn't realize what they were getting. This was a very different Ultimate Warrior. So no, I didn't like that match. I didn't like his return. I didn't like the way they did the whole thing. It just wasn't good.
Yeah,
he talks now like a normal person.
It feels like the WWF at that time was changing.
Yeah,
it wasn't quite hardcore Attitude Era, and it just feels like he was out of place. It's like,
and then they had him, and then they had him like doing their like infomercials with Sans makeup. And he was just like, if you want to be a real war, he's becoming like the Bret Hart Ico Pro guy, and that's not the parts unknown nut job warrior that we're supposed to have. This is a new thing, and it's not working.
But you can't do the parts unknown warrior at this point, right? I mean, things are so rapidly changing in the professional wrestling business.
Yeah, but you can't take a guy who is not able to do what they had him doing and expect him to be like the top guy. That's the mistake that they made, I think.
Ultimate Warrior goes on to defeat Jerry the King Lawler at King of the Ring, but more troubles ahead for the Ultimate Warrior. He's scheduled to team up with Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson to face Owen Hart, Davey Boy Smith, and Vader at In Your House 9. Did watch the promo on YouTube. His contract is terminated by the WWF when he misses several house shows and takes time off to allegedly grieve the death of his father. WWF owner Vince McMahon claims that the Warrior had not seen his father in 10 years, and did not care much for him. Therefore, he did not take the Warrior's excuse for missing house shows at face value. The Ultimate Warrior disputes McMahon's explanation, claiming that the real reason why he no-showed those events was a breach of contract by McMahon. I think for like the Warriors comic books and all that crap stuff did.
Yeah.
And apparently he's upset about his merch percentage with the WWF. So he's terminated. Psycho Sid replaces him at In Your House 9. So Groo, here we go again. The Ultimate Warrior comes back to the WWF for a cup of coffee, and poof, he is gone. I mean, are we starting to see a pattern here? Very underwhelming return for the. Very underwhelming. I wrote very underwhelming return for the Warrior this time around. Your thoughts?
Yeah, in fact, there's very little I remember about this whole thing except his comeback match at WrestleMania, and then like the following Raw, where all of a sudden he's in the ring doing an in-ring promo, speaking kind of normally, like you could understand him now, and like. I didn't like it, and he's starting to use cutting edge language, like "I'm gonna kick your ass," like "Whoa, hey, Warrior,"
that's like when Phil Collins cursed an Invisible Touch.
Was like, "Whoa, wait, this is
hands are shackled."
I thought this was the kids show, but it was pretty much DOA, and then they're having a pay-per-view match with him against Jerry Lawler, who was. Not even a part-timer. He was like once or twice a year, and other than that, he's a commentator. That's who they're going to put the Ultimate Warrior against. It was like it was set up to fail. But you know what? You brought up a bunch of other things, which reminded me that of some of the things that people have said about the Warrior over the years, and said he never really liked the wrestling business. He liked business. And he was looking to make money, like with the comic books, with the merchandise, with all this stuff. But he never really loved the actual wrestling business, the wrestling part of the wrestling business. That's been a criticism of him, or I mean, not a criticism, just a fact. You didn't have to like it. But you honor your contract. You show up. So I don't know why anybody was surprised when he no-showed. It's the same shit. It's a pattern. It's what it is. It was like it the first time. It was like it the second time. It was like it the third time.
What do you think of Vince McMahon calling BS on the whole "my dad passed away and I need time off"? I found that a little bit interesting. I don't know if I would go there if I was an employer. At least not today. I'm back a whole years, but just thoughts on McMahon going, "Hey, you never were a fan of your dad, so you don't need time off for his death."
Well, if this was his first run, that would be cold. But by then, I think he knew Jim Hellwig.
Okay.
And he was very familiar. He was very familiar with his tactics. And you don't, you still. I mean, God forbid something like this should happen to us. We have a certain amount of time that we are allotted to take care of the things we need to take to. But then we're due back at work. That's the way life. That's the way life works. So, I don't fault Vince McMahon for doing what he did. Plus, look, the real question is if this latest incarnation of the Warrior was actually striking gold, would McMahon have done the same thing? And my answer is probably no.
Well, if you watch the Self-Destruction DVD, I think they're making the claim that the death of his dad was a ruse for him being upset about merch, percentage payoffs, and things that involve, like you said, with business, payoffs.
Right, but what I'm saying is the character at the time, this third run wasn't.
You're saying had he really struck gold, maybe Vince would have been a lot more reticent to get rid of him.
I do believe that. I don't think Vince considered it a huge loss.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. There's still one final run left in the Ultimate Warrior. We're going to World Championship Wrestling. The WCW signed the Ultimate Warrior at quote-unquote great expense in May of 1998. Storyline forming a stable opposite Hollywood Hulk Hogan's New World Order called the One Warrior Nation, using the initials OWN as a playoff on the name of NWO. Highlights of the storyline including Warrior kidnapping and the Disciple, a.k.a. Ed Leslie, or Brutus the Barber Beefcake,
or the Zodiac, or the Booty Man.
Frequencies of Magic Smoke knocking out all of the NWO members except for Hollywood. Warrior only grew in 3 matches at WCW. One was a War Games Fall Brawl. And then we get to... it was Halloween Havoc. Okay, so let's just get to it. He goes up against Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hogan at Halloween Havoc. Storyline being that here's going to be the rematch, so to speak, of the great WrestleMania main event. And, I'll get to it, and then I'll get your thoughts. Research says this is considered by many to be one of the worst wrestling matches ever staged. During the bout, an attempt to blind the Ultimate Warrior with fireball or fire paper backfired when Hogan faced complication, igniting a piece of flash paper. The match mercifully came to an horse. Hogan hit Warrior in the back with a chair, allowing Hogan to score a pinfall. And the other thing that was interesting to me was this wasn't even the main event, as Goldberg versus DDP was the main event at Halloween Havoc. Well, you know what? Let me throw it right to you. I got thoughts on paper, but let me throw it to my in-house critic, Andrew Gruthius. Halloween Havoc, many years later, Hollywood Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. What say you?
Well, I'm going to lump this run in all together very briefly. The first appearance of the Ultimate Warrior obviously was fun to see until he stepped into the ring and started talking. And then it was just like, it was literally, and part of it is on the opening package, like 2 minutes of it, what was like a 30-minute just diatribe of nothingness. And I remember he did something which you're not supposed to do, and he basically called out Hogan for him being the only guy that he couldn't beat. Like, I think what he said, and that's what was in the package. He was like, the one time we went at it, you were good, but I was ultimate.
Right. So, right. Are you saying that, and I think, because I'm remembering this now as a fan, you saying that Monday Nitro, that promo, it was like known to be just really rambling, right? That
Yes.
he just kind of took,
Yep.
it was like, he took a lot of liberties with what he said,
Yes.
perhaps did not follow script,
Yes.
and it was long.
Yes.
Really rambling.
Very rambling, very long, made a lot of enemies that night, and that was what his appearances in WCW were. They were, like sort of Sting was for a while, smoke coming from the rafters. I remember you and I went to one Monday Nitro in Miami, and literally when the Warriors showed up, we left. We walked out. It was the end of the show. It was the end of the show, and we did want to beat the traffic, but we weren't interested in seeing a big blotch. We didn't have great seats, but we weren't interested in seeing a big blotch of smoke. Of nothingness, so we left that, and then yes, the match that you're referring to, unwatchable, like I don't, and not unwatchable. Like, I don't really care, if Warrior looks bad, because he was not. Well, we could save personal stuff for later, but I felt bad for Hogan because Hogan was trying, and it was just so convoluted, and so the whole thing was dead on arrival. Yes.
I mean, you don't think... I mean, you got two guys in there. Warrior has no moveset. Hogan's got a limited moveset. You're talking about 7-8 years after they last tangled in the WWF. I mean, they couldn't... from what Giant do a run-in, so perhaps Bischoff knew that these guys, couldn't pull off a classic 20-minute on their own, that you had to have run-ins and, quote-unquote smoke and mirrors to kind of distract that these two guys are not at their best point. I mean, the Warrior, he hadn't been in,
yeah, but Bischoff wasn't.
Years
but you know what? You could say that about a whole bunch of people that Bischoff was bringing in. Bischoff wasn't paying attention to skill set. Bischoff was paying attention to name recognition. He put Piper and Hogan in the ring several times, and those matches are just as bad because
I don't remember that. I mean, here's the. First of all, I was a little bit surprised. I watched the match. I totally forgot. Not even the main event, which to me actually was very surprising. I know you got Goldberg DDP, but Hogan Warrior? That's not a main event on a WCW card?
I guess it was just.
Don't you find that? I mean, come on, honest.
Yes.
You don't find that to be slightly weird?
By today's standards, yes. But back then, it was usual. If there was actually WWF did something similar, but usually if the heavyweight championship is on the line, that's the main event. The lone exception that the WWF did was that WrestleMania 8, where Flair Savage was in the middle of the card, and that was for the heavyweight championship. I
don't listen. I hear what you're saying, but I just found that to be weird.
I think it's weird too. I don't like it. But so why do you think they did it though?
Again, I think perhaps this was maybe dead on arrival. Perhaps.
Yeah, they knew it wasn't going to be a good match.
I didn't read anything about it. I'm just saying, the stuff that you're talking about, his promos were wonky. His promos apparently pissing people off. The guy hasn't really wrestled in a couple of years. He only wrestled 3 matches. The thing would be interesting would be to go back and watch the other 2 matches, because I have a feeling it's probably the same as what we saw Hogan, which was, first of all, they have this crappy Warrior generic bed music that's trying to riff off of the WW. It's terrible. The first couple of minutes, first of all, the crowd doesn't even sound to be too into it, which, I mean, the first couple of minutes, these guys are just posing. I mean, there's no lockup. Then they get the lockup, the test. It's so 90 in 1997, 98, whenever they locked up. It's just a slow-moving match. These guys can't do moves. The Giant run-in and the Stevie Ray, those were not bad. They pulled them off okay. There's just a sloppy overall look to the match, and then the flash paper is kind of like the coup de grace. It's a fail, and ultimately this match failed too.
I would have rather seen the Shockmaster in this match. That's how bad it was.
That's a good one. There you go.
That's how bad it was.
W claimed Groo to save the spines, though Warrior has claimed in interviews and convention says that the only reason he was brought back so Hogan could get the win over Warrior in return for Hogan Mania. Warrior's appearance in WCW was on November 9th, 1998, episode of Monday Nitro, where he came to the rescue of the disciple who was being attacked by the members of the NWO. Warrior retired officially from wrestling later this year. Groo, what should have been a fun, nostalgic return pop for the Warrior, ends up for the most part being a complete dumpster fire. WCW, perhaps at this point, had lost its magic touch, and Bischoff saw the Warrior as a way to get that short-term ratings boost. I was excited for myself, and I'm not even a Warrior guy. I remember being excited for the Warrior return. The story with the Hulkster. I even put in my notes, we went to that Monday Nitro in Miami. It was a complete fail. I wrote in my notes, I remember being completely bored. On the War, both him and Hogan had perhaps seen their better days, but Groo, pretty complete fail for the Warrior and WCW. Final thoughts?
Yeah, 100% fail. Nothing worked. You can't point to anything that they did with him while the short time he was there that made any sense whatsoever. Yes, I was very excited in the beginning, just like you were. And it's like running straight into a brick wall. When you're dealing with you're taking WCW, which was known at the time to sort of fly by the seat of their pants with no real plan. When you couple that with one of the biggest loose cannons in wrestling history, it's gonna crash and burn. And I think deep down we knew that. By that time we were more educated wrestling fans, if you will. I think we knew it was going to end badly, but it was fun to see in the beginning. But then, like for us to get up and leave early from a show where Hulk Hogan is in the ring and Ultimate Warrior is in the ring, and we get up and walk out. That's you got to work hard to be that bad to get rid of us.
Yeah, I remember the symbol on the top of the roof, and he was standing on a gurney up in the rafters. And
I mean, we would sit there and stand up for the Berserker and go huss, huss, huss. We were that dedicated. So here's Warrior and Hogan, two former champions and two legends, two future Hall of Famers, and we're walking out. That's bad.
Yeah, I mean, I really think we represent Joe wrestling fan, and for us to leave early, that is really, really bad.
Yes.
We have one Warrior appearance in 2008. He wrestled one match against Orlando Jordan, former WWE Barcelona, Spain. Warrior won the match and won the new Wrestling Evolution Heavyweight Championship, but then immediately vacated the title. Now, Groo, along the way, we know that the Ultimate Warrior has done a lot of wrestling shoot interviews on YouTube, and he's bashed pretty much everybody along the way, from Vince McMahon to the WWE to Hulk Hogan. Pretty much everybody interacted with the Ultimate Warrior has gotten shellacked on these shoot interviews. But we see a glimmer of hope. On February 20th, 2013, Warrior confirmed on his official YouTube channel that he would appear at WrestleMania on April 7th, 2013. In the same clip, he spoke positively about Vince McMahon for the first time on his channel. And I just fast-forwarded my notes. But let's... All right, Groo, on July 15, 2013, the Ultimate Warrior was featured in the WWE 2K game trailer and revealed that he was on there as a pre-order bonus. For many of us, this was the first sign of an Ultimate Warrior return to the WWE. There was the aligned video game commercial and some associated pre-taped interview segments coming from the commercial shoot. So, Groo, let's get right to it off the bat. Excited about the possibility of an Ultimate Warrior return to WWE?
Didn't care.
What?
I didn't care.
I'm shocked.
I didn't care. He wasn't. Too much had happened. He wasn't. It wasn't as a wrestler. It was. It was just. It was basically just for the Hall of Fame. I think. And
okay.
Like for an ambassador thing, like, and by then to me, take the 4 failed runs in both WWF and WCW, plus all that crap that he was doing with the public speaking and the anti whatever stuff that he was like. I'd had enough of him.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Let me follow up on those comments. Do we like? It seems like Triple H is a guy that's really worked in the WWE, going out, bridging these gaps with some disenfranchised talents and legends, them to come back under the WWE umbrella. We got Bruno Sammartino, Goldberg, the Ultimate Warrior, and it seems Triple H, from what I've read, is the guy that's gone after these legends. All right, whether or not you think they're a legend for another time, but do we like what Triple H is doing, and do we like having these legends back under the WWE umbrella?
Yes. You asked me if I was excited about it. I didn't really care. That doesn't mean I was opposed to it.
Okay.
I wasn't opposed to it. It just wasn't like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like when I heard Kurt Angle, I was very excited. When I, things like that. But Warrior was, I guess I was intrigued, but I was like, But I do.
I'm surprised.
But I do like that Triple H does that, and my opinion. Like I'm sure you're going to ask me whether I think the Warrior belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I'll answer that when you ask.
Say that, please. Save that. Save those thoughts.
I will save that. But yeah, I wasn't excited, but I wasn't opposed. I was indifferent.
Okay. I probably would reiterate the same as well, and I do like that Triple H brings these guys back because, like it or not, the WWE is going to be the preeminent wrestling company, wrestling organization. It's good to have these guys under your banner.
Right. I agree.
Go drink some coffee. This guy's yawning. Unbelievable. Spent days typing up 10 pages of notes, and he's like, I got to take my mid-Saturday nap, too. All right, let's get to it. April 5th, 2014, the Ultimate Warrior brother was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame 2014. The next day, the Ultimate Warrior appeared at WrestleMania 30.
Who inducted him?
Oh, great question. I have the answer for you.
I don't remember.
It was Linda McMahon.
Okay.
Who reportedly was always a fan and always put up with his boorish behavior. And from what I've read, she was the one of the company that was able to, if there was anyone who was able to reach him, it was Linda McMahon. She was like the Ultimate Warrior whisperer.
All right. That's good.
All right, Groo. So the Ultimate Warrior is in the Hall of Fame, but here's the real key piece. The following night, he delivers an epic promo on Raw, his first appearance on Monday Night Raw since his final WWF TV match in 1996. This turned out to be his final public appearance. Warrior gave a speech to the fans and wrestlers, past and present, as his Ultimate Warrior character. An iconic speech from the Ultimate Warrior. Man's heart one day beats its final beat. His lungs breathe their final breath. And if what that man did in his life makes the blood pulse through the body of others and makes them believe deeper in something larger than life, then his essence, his spirit, will be immortalized. Stunningly prophetic speech given his death the next day. I guess, Groo, if you're going to go out, you're going to go out with an iconic speech. I can't criticize this speech at all. What a moment on Raw. He was well received. The crowd was great. Thoughts on Hall of Fame, Raw speech, and then obviously we'll talk about his death in a little bit.
Well, are you asking me if he should be in the Hall of Fame yet, or are you saving that?
The legacy is our last part. I want to go.
All right.
I got a few more things to discuss.
I enjoyed the Hall of Fame speech. I thought he was going to go over the top, like with trashing people, but he really didn't. He made reference to that self-destruction DVD, and he did so from the heart. I liked it. I was okay with it.
Refreshed my memory. What did he say about that?
He was just
saying,
with
the bad words.
Well, he was just saying you only heard part of the story, and I understand that they were upset with me at the time, and the feeling was mutual. But I was still, what I could never really understand was how they could trash something that had been so good for both of us, both them and me, and it was very hurtful. But time heals wounds and blah blah. He didn't get into very specific stuff. But he basically said, while they were trying to keep the Warrior down, you, the fans, were the ones keeping him alive. And thank you all for that. So that's kind of the spin he put on that. It's a good speech.
You know what heals all wounds, Groo?
What?
Bacitration.
I thought you were going to say hydrochlorics.
You know what heals all wounds is probably a WWE Legends contract and merch
and $500,000
merch payoff
a year,
on the WWE, the very popular 2K video game.
Yeah. But
I do remember being touched by his Monday Night Raw speech. I thought it was from the heart. I guess maybe at the end I would have liked to have seen more real sort of moments from this guy. But
I will agree with that. In fact,
I thought it was a guy that had come to peace with maybe his foibles and his faux pas, but was glad to come home to the WWE, his professional wrestling home.
See, honestly,
and I think the other thing that resonated with me was just my last thought was he seemed like a really involved dad. He mentioned his kids constantly, and I was kind of touched that he seemed to be such a caring family man.
Yeah, me too.
That speech is just iconic. I mean, it's just so prophetic. I mean, the next day, Groo, he died April 8th, 2014 in Scottsdale, Arizona. He had, of course, been inducted into the Hall of Fame 3 nights earlier and made his first and final Raw appearance in almost 18 years the day earlier, April 7th. According to reports, Ultimate Warrior clutched his chest and collapsed at 5:50 p.m. while walking to his car with his wife outside of their hotel in Arizona. Rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead at the age of a very young 54 years old. Warrior's colleagues said that the Ultimate Warrior appeared frail during WrestleMania weekend and said that he was sweating profusely and breathing heavily backstage. An autopsy revealed, Groo, that the Warrior died of a heart attack caused by arteriocardiovascular disease. Sorry for my pronunciation. Perhaps side effects from prolonged PED usage. That was something that was talked about in the media. I do remember, upon review, he was very flush during his final appearances at the Hall of Fame and on Raw, like very red,
we noticed
sweaty,
that. I think we were
tone.
watching it together. We noticed that.
Kind of that tone of the skin. But look, it's very sad when somebody dies at a very young age of 54.
Sure.
All right, I'll toss it back to you. Iconic appearances, and then we have the sudden tragic death of Ultimate Warrior.
Well, like you said, it was prophetic. The speech on Raw. In fact, I wish that was his Hall of Fame speech. That was a speech and a half, even though it was 10 times shorter. But considering what happened the very next day, it was like he knew what was coming. I mean, in hindsight, if you look at the speech and then realize what happened the next day, it's like he was foreshadowing. But he left well. He left well. That's the only way I could put it. He said everything he needed to say. He did everything he needed to do, and may we all have that opportunity. You know what I mean by that?
All right, well, I understand. I mean, he was able to mend fences, and he finished at least on good terms with the WWE. Groo, let's get to it. You've discussed it a couple of times. He has a very complicated legacy with the WWE in sports entertainment. The Ultimate Warrior's relationship with WWE was strained at times. And, of course, most recently, the WWE has recognized him as one of their legends of the company with the Hall of Fame induction and various other plots. The WWE officially describes him as being, on their website, as devastating and intense as any superstar who stepped through the ropes, further saying that the Ultimate Warrior may be the most enigmatic man to ever hold the WWE Championship. So my first question to you is, do you think he's or enigmatic man to hold the WWE Championship?
No.
Yeah, neither do I. Thank you.
No.
Okay.
No.
That's the kind of answers I like. No, and let's move on. Let's get to it. We'll get to
Here's my list of who's more enigmatic. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
In 2011, the WWE called the Ultimate one of the most recognizable wrestlers in WWE history, praising his ability to draw power in the WWE universe, and further spoke of his impact as having brought Hulkamania to its knees at WrestleMania 6, retired the Macho Madness at WrestleMania 7, and press-slammed a slew of the greatest legends of his era. The Warrior has appeared as a playable character in many of the WWE's video game packages. The WWE stated that he is a legend and is the ultimate archetype of strength and intensity, and further stated that without question, the Warrior has a name in the pantheon of WWE greats. But let's talk about that legacy, Groo, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier. In 2005, the WWE released the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD, which portrayed the Ultimate Warrior in a very, very negative light. The Ultimate Warrior has claimed that that if the WWE wanted to induct him into the Hall of Fame, they would have to tell the right story opposite of the one depicted in the 2005 DVD. We know that the WWE released the Ultimate Warrior, the Ultimate Collection, a 3-DVD, 540-minute compilation of matches and stories which portrayed the Warrior far more positively. On April 1st, 2014. The Warrior was inducted into the Hall of Fame on April 5th, 2014, the night before WrestleMania. So, Groo, before we tackle our final thoughts on the Warrior and legacy, I mean, have you ever seen in any company, an entertainer on any level go from such a shellacking like the DVD of the Self-Destruction to an absolute Pollyanna kind of whitewash like that in a couple of years later? I made me even think of like Howard Stern. Like it was like two separate kind of stories, and I know I've seen both. I'm a lot more familiar with the Self-Destruction because it was just so memorable. I won't call it brilliant because they trashed him, but I had never seen a DVD tear down a guy pretty brutally like the Self-Destruction. I mean, started off a little bit positive about his initial run, and then it just completely buries him for the next 55-minute DVD. And then, a couple of years later, they want to get him in the Hall of Fame, so they put out a much more positive piece. Is the truth in the middle, or what's going on here, in your opinion?
I'm sure both stories are both 100% true. One can have just as many black marks on their career as they can have, great moments. So I think I've watched both of them at least twice, and they both seem to be telling the same story from different perspectives, and the facts support the original DVD. He's there, then he's gone, then he's there, then he's gone. There's no disputing that he's done these things. So when he's complaining, his big complaint is, why would they need to do that? Other people have done screwed up things. Why don't you make DVDs about them? I can understand that. But with him, it was over and over and over again. They kept giving him chance after chance after chance. It was self-interest, too, because they were making money with him. But, he's got a very checkered history. So I actually think that first DVD tells probably there's probably more truth in the self-destruction DVD than there was in, like, the DVD that the special that they did honoring him. That's what I think.
Good answer, Groo. Warrior had been largely alienated from his peers in professional wrestling in the decade prior to his death, and sometimes was described as a bitter man on bad terms with various wrestling figures such as Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan, and Jake the Snake Roberts. Hogan has even publicly questioned Warrior's value, saying, "You gave him the WWF Championship belt to the Ultimate Warrior, and right away the revenue went down." With Warrior's reconciliation with the professional wrestling industry just before his death, many of his former adversaries offered their condolences. McMahon stated, "We are all so sad that the Ultimate Warrior has passed away. Our heart is with his wife Dana and his 2 daughters." Hogan said, "Rip Warrior, only love. We talked, both forgave each other, brother. We hugged, we shook hands as we told each other, I love you. I am so sad. God bless his beautiful family, brother." He didn't say brother. I added that for comedic effect. Jake Roberts said that he was deeply saddened. "We had a great talk and buried a senseless hatchet. Talked together about working together at some point. Rip Warrior. Taking solace, we made peace." Groo, news of his death spread out to the next day. Websites such as Bing, Facebook, and Twitter. It was also mentioned on ABC News, CNN, and Headline News. Reportedly, almost immediately after Warrior's death, the WWE sent 2 senior officials to Arizona to assist his widow in handling personal things such as grocery shopping so that she could focus on being her daughters. Very classy. I remember reading about that at the time, so that was a pretty classy thing to do, WWE. Good job on their part. The WWE paid tribute to the Warrior on the April 14th episode of Raw with a 10-bell salute and video. The WWE Network aired a lineup dubbed, I remember this, Warrior Week in Warrior's memory. The lineup included a 4-part special. We also had a wrestling-themed episode of The Goldbergs, the ABC sitcom, which was dedicated to the Warrior's memory. And there was some WWE kids projects, such as a Flintstones movie that was dedicated to the Warrior memory as well. UFC Fight Night 40. Lorenzo Larkin, a UFC fighter, wore an Ultimate Warrior mask and wristbands as a tribute. Warrior was awarded a posthumous Slammy Award for Return of the Year in December 2014. A WWE sponsor biography entitled Ultimate Warrior, A Life Lived for the Legend of a WWE Hero was released in 2015. And yet, Groo, there's even more plaudits. I'll take a pause. It doesn't seem like they're really going overboard here. I mean, even if the Warrior was a good guy, it just sounds like wow. I mean, you would have thought he was Hulk Hogan. I mean, or some kind of legend.
Well, you actually said it. It's not just the WWE that's doing these things. You said the Goldbergs. You said all these other these people who are. It's obvious that this guy, what I said in the beginning, he always had the crowd on his side. Maybe not the business, but he always had the crowd. And the Goldbergs paying tribute to him, those are fans. The guy, I don't know who the guy is, the MMA fighter, but I don't remember the name. Yeah, but these are fans. So it's obvious that, like I said, he always had the fans on his side no matter what. It was the business that he didn't really see eye to eye with, which falls in line with what I said. He never really liked the business, but he liked what the business had to offer. And that's proof of that. So no, I don't think they were going over the top.
Thank you. Are you ready?
Yes.
April 2014, prior to his Hall of Fame speech, he had proposed that the WWE start the Jimmy Miranda Award, which would be created to honor WWE behind-the-scenes employees. Jimmy Miranda was a a staff member of the WWE who died in 2002. He had worked in the WWE merch department for more than 20 years. So, based on that feedback, the WWE introduced the Warrior Award for those who have exhibited, quote, unwavering strength and perseverance, who have lived a life with courage and compassion that embodies the indomitable spirit of the Ultimate Warrior. But wait, there's controversy. Former WWE ring announcer Justin Roberts, himself part of this whole hashtag Me Too, he's gotten criticism for some of the stuff he's done in the past. But at the time, he expressed disappointment of how the WWE used portions of the Warriors Hall of Fame speech to promote the award, but left out Warriors' intentions of honoring WWE's off-screen employees. WWE responded, it's offensive to suggest that the WWE and its executives had anything but altruistic intentions in honoring Conor and his legacy with the Warrior Award, and added that moving forward, the award will be given annually to acknowledge the unsung heroes among WWE's employees and fans. 2019, Sue Atchison was the first WWE employee to be given the Warrior Award. That was she was given that award by John Cena. They've also did a Unleash Your Warrior breast cancer awareness campaign with the Susan G. Komen Foundation, in which the Warriors' likeness was promoted on television by WWE wrestlers and breast cancer survivors. Okay, so here's the crux of the criticism that Andrew has brought up at various times throughout the podcast. The WWE has been criticized viciously at times for using Warrior as an inspirational emblem of his campaign. Pro Wrestling Torch describes the Warrior in real life as having made public vile, bigoted, hateful, judgmental comments about cancer victims, Hurricane Katrina victims, homosexuals, women defending gay men, and even Martin Luther King Jr. For example, when Bobby Heenan contracted cancer, Warrior said, "Karma is just a beautiful thing to behold." Vice website wrote that it's the WWE completely whitewashing the Ultimate Warrior's past and elevating his likeness to a bland symbol of corporate altruism is shockingly tone-deaf, especially for a company who, at least outwardly, is trying to appear progressive, inclusive, and diversive. In response, the WWE has said that the Warrior Award recognizes individuals that exhibit strength and courage of the WWE's legendary character, the Ultimate Warrior. Any attempt to distract from the mission of these initiatives and take the spotlight away from the honorees is unfortunately misguided. So, Groo, we've talked about it before. Thoughts on the criticisms of the WWE for picking up and using the Ultimate Warrior as a symbol, quote-unquote, of good and community support?
I agree with the criticisms. They have no business naming an award after the Ultimate Warrior. Everything you said, all the criticisms from Justin Roberts are true. We've seen them. We know he was not a... We know he had these issues. Okay? He does not exemplify, and he is the character. He lived the character. He legally changed his name to Warrior. His family is named Warrior. So you can't tell me that we're honoring the character, not the man. The man is the character, and the character is the man. And yes, on the Hall of Fame, because of what he's done for, as he's transcended the business, but the Warrior Award should not be. I agree 110%. I agreed with it in the beginning. You know that. Or I disagreed
When you
with
say
it.
you agreed with it, meaning
I
you liked it or
no,
you didn't like it?
I've never changed my stance. I always disagreed with it. And, of course, when they first did it, I was like, oh, they're going to... It was back when Hulk Hogan was still fired for his racist comments. Oh, they're going to make an award for the Ultimate Warrior, but they're going to keep Hulk Hogan on the blacklist. So it
why is it got to be black? Why is it got to be blacklist?
That's what they call it. That's what they call it.
I mean,
Okay.
if you have weird thoughts,
The blacklist. Okay. So what do you call it? Do you say if someone's blackballed, blacklisted? What's the current term for it?
No, this was you're a guy who said. By the way, I heard the replay of our podcast because I live in Arizona. Somehow I have a Confederate flag in my house, and trying to make it like I'm a stark raving.
Are you?
Anyway, I knew you. Well, you know me.
Yes, you are not. When did I say Confederate flag?
I don't know. I definitely agree with you. I'm pretty surprised you came out strong here.
We've talked about it before, though.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's a ton of clips on YouTube. He was a motivational speaker. I mean, wow.
He motivated a lot of people to walk out.
He had some really weird thoughts and made some really, really off-putting comments about not just people in the wrestling industry, but
You know what? You know who I compare him to, and I'm interested to hear your thought on this. I compare him to Goldberg. Goldberg never really liked the business, but he was able to draw people in. He came and went. He was not known. He's still not known as a good wrestler, but he still draws the crowd. And he says crazy shit.
Okay,
and
so
they both belong in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
All right. So that's an interesting analogy. There's definitely some similarities, but I put Goldberg actually on a much. Goldberg's had some good.
What? You faded out for a second.
I put Goldberg at a much higher level. He's had some pretty good matches, and he's had a lot longer runs in companies. Yes. He has some personal misgivings, and he had a falling out with WWE. But his match, I mean, if you want to just say the Savage match, perhaps his best match. I mean, Goldberg's had, he's had the WrestleMania tilts with Brock. He had the great match with DDP. I'm not saying no one's going to look at a Goldberg match and confuse him with Bret the Hitman Hart. But yeah. I think Goldberg's had a much more. Plus, I don't think Goldberg was a vomit like Jim Hellwig was in his personal life.
That's true.
He may have been anti WWE, but I've never heard Goldberg say potentially racist or discriminatory comments about his fellow man.
That's true. There was that Klan rally he had at his house, but that wasn't very reported.
Come on, you can't be mad at a fellow Jew. Well, all right. Well, let's get to it, Groo. Here was the ultimate question.
Mm-hmm.
This was all based on the whole podcast. What is the ultimate legacy of the Ultimate Warrior, Groo? And I'll throw it to you first. Is he indeed a WWE legend, Hall of Famer, at best, or at least? Is he a miserable human being with a spotty pro wrestling career?
The first one, at best.
Okay.
The first one. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. What he did is Hall of Fame worthy. He drew money. He was always, once he got to the top, he kind of stayed there. Yes, he came and went. But it's all about the fans and their response, and do they take notice of the person? And like I said, the Warrior, anytime his music played and he ran in, that crowd was on its feet screaming like crazy. And that, to me, that alone, yes, Hall of Fame, yes. And that's his legacy should be as a WWF, WWE Hall of Famer. But that's it. Like all that other stuff you were saying, it's just you got to stop there with it. Not you, but they. It's he. I don't know. There are things that he did that need to be addressed, and they just never addressed them.
Let me tell you my final thoughts on paper. I want to get your thoughts on what I wrote. I put Ultimate Warrior is a dreck of a human being. He was not even a very nice guy. He was at best a very average wrestler. He was a big body in the body-obsessed WWF in the early 90s. I am glad that he was brought back into the fold of the WWE, but he is not deserving of this glancing over his personal and professional record. I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I wrote perhaps one of the most overrated WWE Hall of Famers. He wasn't worth 5 cents in the ring. He had a few big matches, which is a lot more than a lot of people can say. Oh, I will give him credit for that. So you like to do analogies. If I was to put the Ultimate Warrior in a baseball analogy, I would compare him to Dave Kingman, which is kind of a knock on Dave Kingman because Kingman had a better career. I just feel like the Warrior was all power, no move sets, of a bore of a human being, which I believe Kingman was as well. He wasn't. He had some personal misgivings, and I think the other thing, you mentioned about the Warrior Award. One thing I noted in my notes, they moved on from the Fabulous Moolah for the Battle Royal. Did like the Battle Royal, yet they seem to have hardened their stance on not changing this award. So that's my final thoughts on paper about the Ultimate Warrior. Any comments? What I just said.
I think you basically, much more eloquently than I did, you basically said the same thing, adding in about, the kind of human being he was. I didn't really say much about that, but I agree with everything you said. He wasn't a good guy. And, rest in peace, but he wasn't a good guy. Or at least he wasn't a great guy. Because, and that's what they're sort of conning us into think that he was. But my question to you is, as far as legacy goes, does he belong in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, because if you read, because what I wrote was he had a couple of huge matches.
Yeah.
His performance might have been crap, I'll give you that, but he had a couple of big WrestleMania moments, a couple of big matches for SummerSlam. You can't take that away from him. That's a lot more than other people have had. So I do believe. Listen, we've talked about. I won't get into my Coco Beware. Yeah, he belongs there because they got a lot of people in there that did a lot less money wise than in professional wrestling.
All right, but remember, he got in as a headliner, and that's a big deal, isn't it?
It's not the. Yes, and it's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Nice.
Right.
But the WWE is a publicly traded company, and they're trying to put their spin on it. And look, it's a nice snazzy award, but perhaps they should revisit that. And I think even Dana Warrior works for them in some kind of creative capacity. They really seem to have gone out of their way to really solidify this relationship and help the family out for sure, which is nice. Listen,
it's nice of them, but I think you and I agree on everything as far as the legacy goes.
Well, Groo, let's wrap it up with this. If somebody's listening and you look, the Ultimate Warrior's best moment in the ring, what would you direct them to watch on the WWE Network?
That his best moment, that Honky Tonk Man match.
That 20-second squash is what
the whole thing, not just the match, but the whole thing. The setup, because that was his entry into the mainstream WWF stardom. Just look at it again. Look at it from beginning to end. I mean, that's my opinion. I would take that. And the only reason I don't give it the Savage match is because the Savage match was more focused on Savage than it was on him. It wasn't his moment. This was really the only one that was his catapult to stardom.
Yeah, but you mentioned you liked his SummerSlam. I guess what was that? A year later versus Savage.
But it was still focused on Savage.
Okay.
Yeah,
I liked the matches I watched. I thought the second match against Rick Rude was a little bit better than the Savage. But there's
things I need to rewatch.
It's both guys working real hard, and you got a lot of run-ins and managers and Sherry, and it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. To kind of protect, I don't know, Warrior, or I don't know.
Well, that's who needs protecting.
Nonetheless, I mean, you'll have to stay tuned next week. We'll have the Andrew Gruthiest vote of confidence right here on Nothing Worth a Love. Well, let me tell you something, Andrew Gruthi, I'm coming. Let me hear your honky tonk, man. That was pretty good.
I think I think all my fans out there, they love me. They're going to vote for me, goddammit. I'm the number one thing of rock and roll. I'm the number one wrestler in the World Wrestling Federation. Me and Hulk Hogan, we love driving down the road in my pink Cadillac with my guitar and Peggy Sue beside me. Colonel's in the back. I'm coming to your town in my pink Cadillac. Yeah!
That was good. I need a nap after that. That was good. I'm pretty sure he said goddamn on television, too.
Ooh, you can't say that. No.
So, all right. That was good. I enjoyed that one. That's a wrap, Groo.
This is actually, I believe this is our
Legacy.
longest one ever.
Well, that was good. Edits and mistakes aside, it's probably we could have went for 5 hours, but this was good. All right, you want to talk about what's coming up in the weeks ahead?
Yes, we are going to be dark next week. Well, I'm surprised you didn't say. I knew you were going to say. I walked right into that. We are going to be off the air next week, as I will be taking my life into my own hands and traveling to New York.
What?
Yeah, we're going up to camp for 5 days. We're running like a mini camp for about 25 kids.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also a little weary.
Mr. Coronavirus, but he'll hop on a plane.
Well,
this guy went on a diatribe last week about masks and
masks,
cursing,
yes, masks,
cursing.
yes.
Oh, I'm just saying it when it fits your agenda, but then you'll go on a plane and quote unquote you're Mr. Coronavirus, but you'll go on a plane.
I'll go on a plane, but believe me, if I walk onto that plane and I feel I feel unsafe, or people are not wearing masks or whatever, I won't go.
Yeah, but here's the thing: don't you have to quarantine because you're from a hot spot now, Florida?
But I'm going. But that's for New York. I'm actually going to Pennsylvania. I say New York because I'm flying into New York, but I'm going right to Pennsylvania from there. So the question is, so how I'm going to do this, I don't know. And believe me, I am nervous. But I've been cooped up in the house for 4.5 months.
Everybody else is doing the same thing.
Well, anyway, right. so yes, we're not.
But wait a second, we're supposed to be taping next Sunday.
Next Sunday, yeah, I'll be able to do that.
Okay,
I'll be able to do that. I can't. What I can't do is I won't be able to run to be the host, and that's what we usually are because we use my account and everything. So I won't be able to do that, but I'll be able to. We're going to be on the Best of the Worst podcast on Sunday, right?
Well,
Sunday, July 5th.
It's getting everyone excited. You're like, we're going
to be back on the Best of the Worst
Sunday,
podcast.
July 5th.
Yeah, I got it. We're going to be on the Best of the Worst. We're going to be talking about Bon Jovi once again. We're going to be talking about specific albums. Each of us has been assigned certain albums to discuss. I believe it's the post from the 2000s on. So we're going to be doing that on Sunday. And then we are going to be having our 1,500 download special, which is going to have a very special theme, some very special guests. And that's all we're going to be telling you about now. You're just going to have to wait and see. But that's what's coming up on the docket for Nothing Worthwhile with Moody and Groo, and we can't wait.
I've written a wickedly funny monologue for our 1,500. I'll speak about it off air.
I can't wait to.
Anyway,
I can't wait to
I'm looking forward. Looking forward to the worst of the best. Looking forward to the 1,500 download special, and that's it. Let's. You want to take us out of here?
Yes. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a long one. Thank you for hanging in there. Almost 3 hours. That breaks our previous record of 2 hours and 47 minutes. But we will see you next time.
I'm sort of ashamed that it was Ultimate Warrior that we.
There's a lot. There was a lot to cover. There was a lot to cover.
Should have been like Mahatma Gandhi or something like that.
No, we haven't done Mahatma Gandhi yet, but yes, rest in peace, Ultimate Warrior. Thank you all for listening. We will see you next time on Nothing Worthwhile. And until then, 1, 2, 3.
Thumbs uppy. Quack, quack.